Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's indeed another terrific Thursday as we invite you to be a part of our Talk Today production. We're going to have the excellent company of Mr. Emil Kalinowski. You know him from the excellent presence he has on our Money Sense program. So get a chance to join him and have a perspective relative to the global economy. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your banking needs, visit fidelitygroup.com. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Also brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile. Saving lives today. Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Our phone lines are open. You can call and share your thoughts if you want to be a part of our conversation. 949-8037 or toll free with the kind compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. Today we have the excellent pleasure of having the wonderful company of Mr. Emil Kalinowski. My good friend, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. How am I coming through over the air? Am I coming through clearly?
Well, Miss Susan is nodding, and I'm thinking that's either because lunch has arrived or she's just, as I am, happy to hear you. You're coming through 5 by 5.
I'll take those odds. The odds, those are as good as I'll get, 50-50.
There you go. There you go. Well, listen, I want to say first and foremost, thank you for coming on and pray that you and the family and your colleagues and friends, all and Sunday alike are safe and well.
And I share those prayers and feelings right back at you, Mr. Sterling, and Susan and everyone else that's listening. And I hope that we can pull it together. It's that during moments like this where when we're in the crucible, where we come out stronger, forged by fire, and we can accomplish anything once we can get out of the heat. Once the crisis is over, I think we'll have a positive new future to look to. I hope so.
And that's the thing. I think I appreciate this opportunity to share with you. Maybe as people listen, they will get a chance of one thing: be renewed in a sense of hope and expectation. And I think we all want to be able to feel that going down the road, whatever we're doing, that there is some positive outcome. If I could, I certainly will be guided by you. I defer to your intellect and your expertise and experience. But when we look at where we are, maybe a few things to understand as much as we can, some of the financial ramifications, cost to date, on the global perspective. Because I think oftentimes we look too much internally with blinders on and we don't see the big picture, as it were. But also maybe that sense of hope and expectation, that potential that we could come out on the other end of this thing a better people, a better person, a more unified society, a more sort of kind, gracious, generous world, as it were. Too idealistic, you think?
No, not at all. I believe that this is the tradition of Anglo-American history over the centuries, is that we come into a crisis with many problems, with partisanship, with economic problems, and we enter the crisis, and it unifies us, and we come out of it with many of our problems solved, and with an optimistic view of the future that we can accomplish anything, because as I said, we've been tested. Our metal has been tested. So I'm optimistic about the medium to long-term future. I think there's a great age in front of us, but maybe just not tomorrow. Maybe there's still more hardship ahead of us.
And I like your reference to the refiner's fire. It's whatever it is. Sometimes you need to. We talk about the diamond emerging, because of the pressure. We look at, steel needing to be forged in order for it to be put into something more useful, and whether it's gold going through the smelt or otherwise. So sometimes we need this, heat. What is it the saying? Put a little heat under that to get things moving. That doesn't in and of itself have to be a bad thing if we look at the examples in nature and otherwise. So maybe first and foremost, if you were asked to say, well, I'm looking at this now and I put a timeline on it, the short to medium term, what would that look like? 1 month from now? 10 years from now? What do you see?
1 month from now, I imagine it'll be worse. And 10 years from now, I believe it would be a true golden age, the best years of our lives. So that quite a couple of extremes there. But, the events were so unusual. The virus was completely unknown. And then add on top of that, the government's reaction, completely unknown to any sort of recent history, recent memory. And that took the economy, the global economy, and all manner of markets, whether it be stock markets or bond markets or commodity markets, it took them down very fast, very strongly, because it was so uncertain, so unusual. And, some of the worst case scenarios were still in play. Many of the projections for the virus were made with perhaps the idea that the governments wouldn't respond fast enough, or that the virulence was much higher than we had seen recently. So there's a true downside that markets were examining. And so they felt so strongly, equity markets, for example, the global stock market, as measured by the MSCI World Stock Market, which factors in the United States and every other country in the world, that one fell 32% from the start of the year to the low point. But then it's rebounded since, and now it's only down 17%. The American stock market, the S&P 500, the one that we're probably most familiar with, it began its trend down from the 19th of February for just 1 month, all the way until the 23rd of March. It fell 30% from where it had started the year. And since then, it's rebounded, and it's all the way back up to, let's say, only down 14%. And so we're in this moment where the markets have reassessed the worst case scenarios, and they've taken a breather. But to your question earlier of, well, where are we going to be a month from now? Unfortunately, what happens during these kind of events, and we've seen them throughout history, not this exact one, but moments like this, when bear markets take place, when recessions are afoot, is that there is a strong downtrend and then a rebound. And Mr. Sterling, this is not my phrase, and I don't know why the people in our finance industry, what they were doing with cats, but they refer to it as a dead cat bounce.
Yeah.
That's not me. I'm a cat lover, but that's what they call it. That must have been happening back in the day. In the 19th century, they were using cats to measure whether somebody was a witch or where the stock market was going. I don't think things have changed that much if we really look into it as to prognosticating the future. But it seems that we've rebounded, but if we delve in a little bit deeper into some of the different markets, the recovery is not yet here.
Yeah. And with that, if you were sort of projecting that recovery, would we think 18 months from now, or a year from now, that we would start to see it, or would it be even sooner?
Well, the International Monetary Fund very kindly produced a report for this show. They knew I was going to be on, and they said, Mr. Emile, hold on a minute. Let us put our best people on this, and we're going to come up with some answers for you. And I said, please work on it quickly. Mr. Sterling, he's a difficult talk show host, and I'm coming on Thursday. So they said, no problem. And what they did is they came up with an answer, and they said, as best they can estimate, they are seeing the advanced economies contracting 6% this year, and then rebounding 4.5% next year. So that's not a full recovery. And to your question, is it going to take less than a year? No, it will take more than a year. And that's just the advanced economies. For the emerging ones, they said that the contraction would be just short of 2%, and then that it would rebound very strongly, 10% next year. But if you factor it all in, if you weigh how much these different economies weigh or are worth in economic activity, no, by next year, we will not have recovered everything that we have lost. And the worst thing is that the International Monetary Fund put in some strong caveats. And they said, this is assuming that governments around the world deliver very well on their policy proposals. This is assuming that there's no second wave of the virus. This is assuming that there's no follow-on effects from the slowdown itself, because we're facing a slowdown in economic activity, but that doesn't even factor in the financial effects. And specifically what I'm referring to is the debt that our world was carrying heading into this downturn. And that debt needs to be paid, refinanced. And if it isn't, that can set off a domino effect of companies that would continue as going concerns, but now they're having difficulty financing. So now they start entering bankruptcy. So the IMF forecast is one of not great news, not recovery in the next year, and that's assuming everything goes pretty well.
And this is where I'm hoping as people listen to us, there is a human aspect to this. We know the health and welfare of individuals, of people, of communities, of families. But I think sometimes we don't appreciate the economic, not just the financial, but the economic implications. And as you were so gracious to accept the invitation, we can look at this all-encompassing from the public policy perspective and see how it's interwoven. The governments of the world, as it were, the larger industrialized nations, what they do and don't do, when they do it, and how they do it is going to impact all of us, because there's this interconnectedness with the markets, with the politics, with the economics, with everything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The issue of debt, I believe, was it a report that IMF had, was it $1 trillion in a war chest that they were willing to throw at this. I think it was $1 trillion. I checked under my piggy bank, and that was just a little bit more than I had, in my piggy bank. But in global terms, I mean, $1 trillion, is that, in your view, enough? Do you think we're going to need more collectively, whether it's not just the IMF, but from all of the other, combined interests to restart the world economy, to be able to get things going again? Susan is reminding us of a quick break. Let's do that. When we come back, can we also ask about, maybe the cost of this, the potential for unemployment, the emerging opportunities for new endeavors, and then go back to the issue of debt for the country, but also for the company, and even maybe for the individual. Would those be some of the things we can chat about?
I can't wait.
All right. Emile Kali knows, right? He knows it. So we're going to share with you. Stay tuned, please, for Talk Today.
Start getting your debt under control with a debt consolidation loan from Fidelity Bank. At Fidelity, your loan decision is quick with no runaround. Plus, with competitive interest rates and fees, we will help you reduce your monthly payments and get you back to living again. Don't let the burden of overwhelming debt tie you down this year. Call Fidelity today and let's make it happen with a Fidelity Bank debt consolidation loan. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Digicel's Shake to Win is back. Every Saturday, Digicel is giving you a chance to win LTE handsets, cash prizes, data, D-Music subscription, gas vouchers, grocery vouchers, and that's not all. Every week, you get a chance to win a $5,000 regional prize. Don't miss out. Simply download the new My Digicel app, activate a plan if you're not already on one, and shake to win every Saturday. It's that simple. My Digicel. More made simple. Terms and conditions apply.
Bring a little bit of luck to your house with Lucky Slice from America. Burgers, steak, and the all-day American breakfast. From Europe, fish and chips, pizza and crepes. And from Asia, sushi.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, 7 days a week, delivery or pickup, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. In these difficult times, we can all use a little bit of luck. Keep calm and stay lucky.
Minimize contact. Make your credit card payment by phone. Pay only for food. No delivery fee. No service charge. Certain restrictions apply. Call Lucky Slice Pizza to place your delivery order now. 949-3456.
Order from K-Man Creperie, Mojo Sushi, and Lucky Slice Pizza. Call 949-3456.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman.
We are pressing for everyone to use their good conscience. Don't be selfish in respecting the suggested distance of 6 feet and the washing of hands constantly. Please check on your neighbors and especially our elderly. Also, persons who have chronic lung disease, diabetes, bronchitis, cancer, or asthma. Check on your family members and isolate them soonest as possible. I ask those persons who smoke until it's clear, please do not put anything in your lungs that are not natural. You may well be increasing your risks. This includes vaping. Self-isolation is very important for our country's ability to bounce back quickly to some normalcy. This disease is not prejudice.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
Social distancing is crucial for our community to get back to normal. And never before has communication been so crucial. Keeping in touch with family, friends, and up-to-date requires you to stay in touch. Green Turtle offers the solution for both. Download the Green Turtle app now. Top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination in Cayman. Phones delivered to your home, and with the new rewards program, you can even redeem points towards a new phone and other products. Download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Hashtag Stay Home Cayman. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
Start getting your debt under control with a debt consolidation loan from Fidelity Bank. At Fidelity, your loan decision is quick with no runaround. Plus, with competitive interest rates and fees, we will help you reduce your monthly payments and get you back to living again. Don't let the burden of overwhelming debt tie you down this year. Call Fidelity today and let's make it happen with a Fidelity Bank debt consolidation loan. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And our guest is, no stranger to our airwaves, one of the co-hosts at our wonderful show, Money Sense, Emil Kalinowski. Hey, thanks very much. You guys do a great job on our show, and I think getting the discussion, on economics and on finance, increasingly get more of us familiar with the terms, but not just the terminology, but understanding how it's interrelated. So now, as we look at this pandemic, maybe we can appreciate there's more to it than just what we're seeing in the narrative from and the pundits, political or otherwise. So thanks very much for giving us some of your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Sterling. My time is free. The kids have been tied down. They haven't they haven't figured out how to pick locks yet, so I can speak to you.
I thank you. I laugh because the running joke, as probably most of us know, that we have our children at home and we're trying to facilitate work and school. We're seeing the jokes where, the homeschool environment, one teacher has already fired or been, this one child has been suspended. So we're finding humor as best as we can in this whole scenario, and that is amazing. But hopefully it's bringing us closer together to appreciate the true value of what is happening.
Yes, and the newfound respect for our teachers. Amazing.
Yeah, man.
Amazing. I mean, we've gotten used to running our lives and being professionals, and then we forget how difficult it is to try to control a room of 30 little humans with sharp little teeth and running around with scissors. And now we're just asked to do it with 1 or 2 or 3 or so kids, and we can barely make it through the day.
Yeah, I have a friend who joked one time.
Bless our teachers.
Amen. And trust that more will answer the calling, because I think we don't see sometimes, the true value of things, and the word essential may finally, be given the value, but also the respect and appreciation. But as we look at it, we'll understand why words are just so important. And with education, I say this without fear or favor of contradiction or even any being maligned as being politicized, but education and health, I've always believed, are the pillars. And I think now is a great time for us to look, perhaps as a global comparative, to say, what other nations are doing relative to teachers. We look at Singapore for many examples, but we know for their public sector, and in education included, they've attracted and retained the best and the brightest. They've invested in their people, but so too has Sweden and other nations. I want to ask, though, from that perspective, as we look at this thing, maybe debt, maybe financing, but could we go back to some of the things I was asking before the break? The amount of money globally that may be required to get this, to get us over this, or is it just money, or is it not money? I mean, what is your thought?
It is money, and there's not going to be enough of it. That seems to be the problem. So yes, the International Monetary Fund at the beginning of this month said that they had a credit line of $1 trillion that they're going to be able to use, but they went to the G20, that's the group of 20 nations, that's the wealthiest, largest economies in the world, and the International Monetary Fund said, we would love for you to double that credit line. In fact, we need you. We need $2 trillion. And then at the same time, they said they needed an immediate cash contribution of $500 billion. Now, I read their statement, and it wasn't clear whether or not that $500 billion was already part of the additional $1 trillion they were asking, or if they were asking for an additional $1.5 trillion. Maybe this is just how you negotiate. You keep it vague, and you hope that the other party will give you the additional half trillion that you're asking for. But the point is, they have money, they need more. And the reason why is because just at that time when these announcements were being made at the beginning of the month, it was on April 3rd or so, they also announced that they had received requests from 80 nations for help. And normally they say they get it just from a handful, and I'm guessing they round that up. I'm guessing they don't get that many requests for help at all when everything's going fine. But 80 countries coming at once is a huge number. And so how can the International Monetary Fund help those 80 nations at once? And I don't believe they can. And just for an example, this week, the IMF announced very kindly that they are going to use $125 million with up to, $215 million with up to $500 million is going to be used to defer debt that is due by 25 of the poorest countries in the world. 19 of them happen to be in sub-Saharan Africa, just to give your audience an idea of how poor we're talking about. And so they're saying for the next 6 months, don't worry, you don't have to pay us back. And then the G20, a day later, earlier this week, they said that they would contribute between 20 billion and possibly up to 40 billion, north of 40 billion was one of the quotes, in debt deferment, again, for 76 nations, the poorest 76 nations that qualify under some World Bank designation of being very poor. And so that sounds great. It sounds more than $730 billion or foreign currency offering 20 to 40 billion. So we're about 600 billion-ish short of what's due this year that emerging markets typically would earn from tourism, trade, remittances, or financing from advanced economy money center banks like the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, none of that is forthcoming. And so we potentially are looking at a situation like the early 1980s, which is the last time the world saw a debt default en masse by the emerging markets. And that was a very difficult time, both for the emerging markets and the advanced economy banks and money centers that suffered the consequences of that. So there's a lot of debt due, and the assistance is coming up, is not enough.
Mm-hmm. So with that, then could we potentially see down the road printing money, increasing inflation, currency devaluations, especially for those the poor economies and the like?
For the countries that, yes, that is a strong possibility. And the International Monetary Fund at the beginning of February said that as part of that response, inflation, money printing, devaluations, that they are in favor, in certain circumstances, of capital controls for those emerging markets. Because if you don't have enough money coming in and you owe a lot of money and you don't want to default on it, well, then you have to keep the money that's already in the country. And so, incredibly, the International Monetary Fund at the beginning of February said that they would understand if certain countries did that. And just yesterday, the head of the IMF in Asia was speaking at a conference, and he also reiterated that capital flow measures is what they call it. They wouldn't call it capital controls. It's a euphemism, but they said we would understand if you implemented capital flow measures. So there's still a second economic wave, much like maybe there might be one with the virus. Maybe I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm in a much more dismal science, economics. But there could be a second viral wave, and there could be a second economic wave yet still ahead of us.
And I think, one of the expectations of our discussion for me is that as people listen, that they start to be more comfortable. I think that we are, for some reason, put off by, maybe it's the terminology, maybe it's we speak in jargon, or they don't see the effectiveness. Who cares what IMF does in sub-Saharan Africa, or even, maybe one of the regional countries was to devalue. But I think we need to care. Why should we?
Well, besides the obvious humanitarian and moral feelings of kinship with people that are struggling, setting that aside, that's all granted and obvious. We should, because the last time something like this happened was in the 1980s, and it came back and affected the advanced economy money centers, of which we are one of. And I remember, and there was a quote from someone that was working in the Federal Reserve at the time that I was just reading again this morning. And he said that the entire continent went belly up. This is by Richard Koo from 1982. And he's saying the entire continent went belly up. He's referring to South America, and 7 out of 8 US money center banks were bankrupt all at the same time in August 1982. We had to rescue the situation. We did everything legal, illegal, paralegal, you name it. And we kept going for 7 years until American banks finally kind of reclaimed their health, quote unquote. Now, I know that's just reference to American banks, but I think we can apply that more broadly, is that if the emerging markets suffer, that will result in losses on books here across the money center banks of the rest of the world. Those represent investments that people have made in their pensions, and those investments would then possibly have to be written down, and then we would suffer in that financial sense. Does that make sense with the connection I'm trying to make?
Indeed. I was thinking that as you were sharing, many of us either read or have heard of the book, The Confessions of the Economic Hitman. Could that become a very real thing again going forward in this next decade?
I have not read that book, but it's my sense that the IMF was, and I believe that was written by someone who worked for the IMF or the World Bank. Which one was it?
I thought it was IMF.
I believe it's gotten much more less strict than before. I think that the IMF is much more flexible, and that's why they're saying, we understand if you implement capital flow measures this time around, and that's perfectly fine unless that's your capital flow that you would prefer not to be restricted to some country for some indefinite period of time.
Right. Now, I carefully want to ask, you were referencing sort of the money centers and the role that Cayman plays. I think for some of us, we're not appreciative of, maybe I'm overstating it, but I think we're quite important when it comes to global finance, facilitating the different structures of vehicles that through here and the amount of money that goes through. So if our tourism sector is potentially impacted, could it be that our financial sector could benefit more from this with all the new deals and the structuring and the way the money would flow and the like?
I don't know. There was a study. I don't believe we would benefit, but maybe it wouldn't suffer as much as obviously as tourism. And I remember that there was a study in 2006 by the Congressional Budget Office of the United States. And they were asked, what would the economy look like if we suffered another 1918 style pandemic? And they were asked to come up with how different industries would be impacted, as well as the overall economy. And their overall economic forecast was for a 4% contraction in real GDP, 4.2. And just for comparison, that compares very well to the 2007 to 2009 recession, which was 4.25%. And it compares pretty closely to what many organizations are forecasting for today, that what will happen. So I think we can rely on this forecast, even though it was made some 14 years ago, as being reasonably accurate. And what they said, what they forecast was that if you look at it by industry, the airline industry would suffer a 67% contraction in activity. Transit would suffer a 67% contraction. Retail trade, a 10% contraction in a 1918 style pandemic. But accommodation, minus 80%. Food service, minus 80%. So that's exactly what we're seeing right now. But for finance, they said the result would be zero. That was their forecast. Is that going to come to pass? I don't know, but it's a starting point that would suggest that it's good that we have this other leg for our economy to stand on. But would it benefit? No, but at least on a relative terms, at least maybe it wouldn't shrink as much.
Right. And this is it. Now with that, I think we have our news break. And Emil, when we come back, we'll continue. Certainly appreciate your insight. To our listeners, the phone lines are open, so stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have, on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access. Local, regional, international, this is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
Water Authority Cayman will be conducting leak detection work in East End on Friday, April 17th from 12 a.m. midnight through 5 a.m. Work will take place along Seaview Road between the John McLean and Austin Connolly Drive junction to the Frank Sound junction. Customers living along these roads and all adjacent roads will experience service interruption during this period. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. Security forces enforcing the lockdown in parts of Nigeria have killed more people than the coronavirus itself, a local rights group says. Evidence of the killings comes from members of the public who rang their hotline or sent in videos, the National Human Rights Commission adds. It says law enforcers have killed 18 people in Nigeria since lockdowns began on March 30th. Coronavirus has killed 12 people there. And Barcelona's mayor has called for an end to strict coronavirus lockdown measures in Spain, which bar children from going out for any reason. Ada Calor wrote on Facebook, "These children need to get out." Herself, the mother of youngsters aged 3 and 9. Spain, which has the most confirmed cases in Europe, is the only country on the continent where children cannot leave home at all. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
When you've got boxed in your freezer, there's no need to stress. Just heat it up, cause we've done the rest. Get boxed, it's local. Get boxed, it's tasty. Get boxed, it's easy. Get boxed.
Boxed meals are available in the freezer aisle at all major supermarkets, or stay at home and take advantage of their free home delivery with any order of $100. Visit boxed.ky for the full menu. Order at wholesale at catering.ky or call 326-3937.
For nearly 20 years, King Sports Center has been the heart of the Cayman fitness and wellness community. In order to ensure the welfare of all, we are temporarily closed until further notified by the Cayman Islands government that it is safe to reopen. During these trying times, we encourage everyone to maintain a healthy lifestyle, mind, body, and soul. We look forward to continuing providing you with world-class service in the very near future. Remain strong and continue to show the world the power of Cayman unity. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
The Cayman Islands government wishes to advise the public that vehicle licensing inspection services will not be available today, Thursday, the 16th, or Friday, the 17th of April, as previously announced. Licensing offices must remain closed pending the resolution of the COVID-19 crisis. Government is working hard to resume providing these services in the near future.
Social distancing is crucial for our community to get back to normal. And never before has communication been so crucial. Keeping in touch with family, friends, and up-to-date requires you to stay in touch. Green Turtle offers the solution for both. Download the Green Turtle app now. Top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination in Cayman. Phones delivered to your home, and with the new rewards program, you can even redeem points towards a new phone and other products. Download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Hashtag Stay Home Cayman. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
Start getting your debt under control with a debt consolidation loan from Fidelity Bank. At Fidelity, your loan decision is quick with no runaround. Plus, with competitive interest rates and fees, we will help you reduce your monthly payments and get you back to living again. Don't let the burden of overwhelming debt tie you down this year. Call Fidelity today and let's make it happen with a Fidelity Bank debt consolidation loan. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Hello, K-Man. I'm Quincy Brown. Anybody else getting mixed up with all these new coronavirus terms? Me too. But guess what? I've watched the press conferences and I've read the press releases and I've seen all the social media posts. Look here, I can help you out. Saving lives is K-Mankind.
Preventing dengue is as simple as preventing mosquito bites. Use a mosquito repellent, wear protective clothing, and stay indoors during early dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are most active. Control the places around you where mosquitoes breed. Remove stagnant water in outdoor and household settings. As a weekly habit, persons should change the water in vases, clear the water in saucers under potted plants, and ensure air conditioner drip trays are free of stagnant water. Outdoor objects capable of holding water should be kept empty and preferably disposed of or put into dry storage if not used. These include open bottles and tins, watering cans, buckets, empty paint tins, and old vehicle tires. Do your part to control the spread of dengue. The dengue virus is an infectious disease transmitted through mosquito bites. Symptoms may come on as early as 4 days or as late as 3 weeks following an infection. There is no vaccine or specific medication to treat dengue. Symptoms of dengue include high fever, headache, pain behind the eyes, joint and muscle pain, and rash. If persons have any of these symptoms, they should go to the nearest health center or hospital. It is advised to drink lots of liquids and avoid medication that contains aspirin.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. 1-800-534-8255. If you're not a Flow subscriber, then 949-8037, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Honored to have Mr. Emil Kalinowski join us, and it's refreshing to be able to get a chance to look at this from a perspective that is so global in perspective, Emil. And I think as we see it, it's not just money, but it's money sense, huh?
Mr. Sterling, just as you started talking, no doubt saying how bad you thought I was doing, it disconnected. So I'm back on now. So I'm sorry, can you tell me again how the show was going?
Yeah, you missed all of the good accolades we were heaping on you, man.
Well, that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, man. Well, it's whatever you did, it sounds even better, so...
okay, good.
We're getting there. And this is one of the other things, too, I believe we're going to see. There was an article a friend shared with me from Bloomberg, I think, a couple of days ago. And it talked about leveraging technology then, and if we can use it now, would we be able to continue that going forward? For instance, teaching and learning online. Why just use it now? Why can't this be the new norm going forward? But other things, the way we look at public policy and the like. So there are potentially some great things that could come as a result of this. But what about the downside? I mean, more debt? Well, let me hear from you. What are your thoughts before I throw more stuff at you?
Well, I think there are 3 scenarios that we're looking at, both economically and socially. And they are, the first, that we just go back to the way things were after this. What do you think, Mr. Sterling? What do you think? Do you think that's likely that we're going to go back to the way things were?
I hope not. I sincerely doubt it. If nothing else, we're becoming conditioned, as it were. Watch people's behavior. And even those of us who may have been reluctant to do certain things, starting to conform. So unlikely. But what do you think?
No, I agree. It seems improbable. I would be most surprised if we just went back to the way things were after this. And that gives us 2 possibilities. One, then it will get worse or get better, or at least get different. I think it'll just get worse, and then we'll clear the decks and we'll be able to build something new going forward. Some of the reasons why is because some of the economic data that we're getting are suggesting that there's being permanent damage being done. Perhaps the most troubling one, at least that I'm aware of, is out of the United States. There's reports that not only have millions of people been put out of work, but 1.6 million people have already given up on looking for work. Now, just to give your audience some perspective, during the entirety of the 2007-2009 recession, 1.9 million people gave up on looking for work before eventually, over the years, maybe filtering back into the labor force. But here, in just such a short time, we have suffered deep long-term damage. And so I believe that we're going to be entering a completely different world. And part of the problem or the solution or the necessity will be that governments feel, because they have implemented these strict measures, is they feel that they need to support the people that they have put out of work by providing them money. But we entered this already in debt, so now they're going to be creating more money out of thin air, and it's going to be at an incredibly rapid rate, at a rate that suggests that we'll be breaching World War II levels of debt to GDP.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just seems like how are we going to pay for all that? What sort of controls or new policies are governments going to implement in order to placate the population that has been put out of work? There's talk of modern monetary theory, which is, well, I don't know if you've discussed it on your show, but it just seems to be more leaning towards the left side of giving money away to people. A universal basic income, that's another way of thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, but don't be too diplomatic, And as I listen to you, you're giving the scenarios. Do we go back to how it was? Does it get better? Does it get worse? And I think many of us, because we're naturally optimistic, or we always want to see the silver lining, will err and pray and hope that gets better. But potentially, it could get worse in the sense that, well, let me ask, those who have given up on the prospects of ever finding employment again may become despondent and not just dependent on the financial dole from the government, but their physical, mental, and social health may be almost unmeasurable.
Yes, that's probably the biggest cost, is because we have already seen what the social costs can be, because we didn't enter 2020 in isolation. There were a dozen years before 2020, and I'm speaking of since 2008, the global economy has never really recovered with the same gusto that it had before. And while there may be positive numbers and positive growth, the growth has been so weak and so tepid that there have been deaths of despair across the United States and the United Kingdom. Democracy, as measured by The Economist, has retreated. People's faith in democracy has retreated. And I believe it all has to do with just a dozen years of very slow to poor economic growth that's resulted in social despair and political upheaval, because after so many years, people were patient. But recently, for the last 6 years, they've begun to turn to political outsiders and radicals and populists. And I think that they may be liable to do so even more because of the terrible economic price that we're paying now.
And with that, and I'm hoping equally that as people utilize this time, not just to upskill, not just to do the things, the joke being that someone has shared, I'm sure we've all heard it if I've heard it, cleaning the house, I just realized I got enough time. I realized that wasn't the excuse. There's a lot of time, but we still haven't tackled the filing and the cleaning of the things that we don't want. But with that in mind, if we'll think to Mill or some of the other philosophers and even the economists of the 19th and early 20th century, are we at risk then that the government, the authorities, the police, those in that sort of position may now have become so accustomed to the amount of influence and control that they have over the lives of the daily citizen that becomes the norm, that our liberties and freedoms are now, significantly reduced and impaired?
Well, that seems to be the way we were trending anyhow. And that seems to be the way, that's what people were looking for anyway during these moments of crisis. They're looking for people with answers, with a plan. The era of laissez-faire economics, laissez-faire government policies seems to be behind us. And that doesn't exactly comport with my political leanings. I'm more conservative, and I do like a more liberal, or in the classic sense, government. But that doesn't mean that during different periods of economic and social political history that people don't desire more authoritative people with answers, people with plans, because we're in a crisis. And so they are looking towards somebody with solutions. And this has been building up for a very long time, and it's a natural part of the long historic Anglo-American cycle where we enter a period of decline, but then rebirth. Mm-hmm. We enter a crisis, and in that crisis, we look towards strong leaders that otherwise we would be appalled by, but people with answers and solutions. And then we enter that and exit that time period more unified.
Okay. Now with that, I'll just put this on the table as we go to the break. That notion of trust and confidence that a people would have in this elected government, so in a democracy, but equally the ability and intellect that we perceive in those in position of authority, public and private sector. Maybe it is now a time to return to that, where there is that level of confidence and competency, and then there is that trust and ability. So after the break, maybe I'll weave that into a discussion as we look at the geopolitical landscape. We'll see. Please stay tuned.
Digicel is all about giving customers more convenience, more peace of mind, and more flexibility. Do more with the new My Digicel app. Buy plans, pay your bill, track your credit, check your data, and monitor your accounts. It's easy to use and has everything you need in one place. It's time to simplify your life, so go ahead and see for yourself. Download the new My Digicel app today. More made simple.
The public is advised that the hard curfew, which is currently in place, prohibiting access to all beaches and the coastline, has been extended. This means that all beaches, including the coastline, will remain closed until 5 a.m. Friday, 17th April.
There is to be no swimming, snorkeling, fishing, exercising, or any activity on the beach or along the coastline during these times. Private owners with beach access are not allowed beyond the high water mark. This restriction has been imposed by the Commissioner of Police and will be strictly enforced. Stay home, Cayman.
Radio Cayman News
brings the total number of positive cases to 54.
Introduced a containment area around an apartment complex in Georgetown.
Curfew across all public beaches right through until 5 a.m. on Friday morning.
You may survive it, but you may have been the instrument of another's demise.
Radio Cayman, your official source for Cayman's COVID-19 response. Hear it here first.
Hello, Cayman. I'm Quincy Brown. Anybody else getting mixed up with all these new coronavirus terms? Me too. But guess what? I've watched the press conferences and I've read the press releases and I've seen all the social media posts. Look here, I can help you out. Shelter in place. Stay home. Stay out of Johnny Public. Una got it now? If Una want to stay up to the time with what's going on, there's only one place for the real information, the Cayman Islands government. Visit gov.ky/coronavirus. Now remember, keep washing your hands, keep following the rules, and keep taking care of each other. Saving lives is Caymankind.
Social distancing is crucial for our community to get back to normal. And never before has communication been so crucial. Keeping in touch with family, friends, and up-to-date requires you to stay in touch. Green Turtle offers the solution for both. Download the Green Turtle app now. Top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination in Cayman. Phones delivered to your home, and with the new rewards program, you can even redeem points towards a new phone and other products. Download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Hashtag Stay Home Cayman. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks again to Mr. Emil Kalinowski for joining us. You know him from our Money Sense program, and I must share, you and your team do a fantastic job. So thanks very much for allowing us to be part of the conversation.
On behalf of the team, I thank you. They do a great job, and I thank you.
All right.
We all do.
Well, this is part and parcel, I think, why Radio Cayman has been so, well received, and why we're always trying to position so that we offer something for everyone. I think in today's discussion, the notion that we get to appreciate, there's so much. I was thinking as I was sharing that we often sort of quote Burke, evil prevails when good men do nothing. I think Mill had said something similarly when he said, or evil men, something, how they go, bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than when, good men look on and do nothing. So similar to what Burke shared. Is this now a case where in this time that the good people, the sensible people in our society, this WhatsApp message says, there is enough good, sensible people in Cayman to insist that we return to the democratic norms. Is there a fear then, as I was positing earlier, that if we sit back and we allow whatever that leadership looks like, political, economic, otherwise, to just do what may be perceived to be justifiable then, or political expedient then, or in their best interest then, that we could, instead of emerging as a better, stronger, more unified society, be even worse than we are now, debt-laden, freedoms impinged, and all of our movements and democratic norms significantly and negatively affected?
Yes, that is the risk that we face, but it's a risk that we have to take on, and it's simply a natural part of the cycle. But I have confidence in our institutions and our people that we will be able to do the hard work of clearing the decks and then rebuilding from there. I suppose it's a little bit like a forest fire. After a long time, forest fires are necessary to clear the underbrush, to be able to renew growth. But of course, the forest fire can rage out of control. Mm-hmm. But I'm optimistic. I believe that we can come out of this stronger and better. And before we went to break, you were talking about institutions and their strength and the lack of confidence. Mm-hmm. And out of the United States, and this is also true in Europe, there's a survey that's being done in Europe as well. But out of the United States, this is the one that I'm most familiar with. That's the longest term one. It's by the Gallup organization, and they do a survey on confidence in institutions, and they've been doing it since the early 1970s. And they ask, do you have a lot of confidence in the medical system or public schools, Congress, banks, organized religions, newspapers, the presidency, the Supreme Court, big business, organized labor, and the military? And you can apply that to us here in the Cayman Islands and then into Europe and across the world. And what you would have seen, and I've seen, again, this in Europe as well, is that since the 70s, we have steadily and slowly, until recently, been accelerating a loss of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the 1970s, the medical system in the United States, there was 80% confidence in it, but now it's only 30-some%. Public schools was in the 60s, but now only 30. Congress was always terrible, and it was already at 40%, even in the best of days, but now it's at 10%. Essentially every single institution has lost ground, confidence, respect, the presidency, every single one except the military. So that goes to your point of a little bit of concern. It makes us a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
The military is the only institution, at least in the United States, and I saw something similar in Europe with police, that has gained ground. It went from 60% confidence in the early 1970s to mid-70% right now. But this is natural. We cannot have, as a society, continued loss of confidence in our institutions, and they will hit a low point. I believe that the economic situation will bring us to that low point here sometime soon. I don't know exactly, 18 months or so, but thereafter we will rebuild, and I think it'll be a good one.
Well, I think, as you shared, having that level of confidence, optimism, I think is good for us as individuals. You can't always look outside, and if it's raining, if it's dark and gloomy and cold and cloudy, and see it as a bad thing. Even though you may have been locked indoors and can't get out to play with your friends, but if you were to embrace it, sing in the rain. So having the mindset, I think, bodes well. But with that, if I could ask them, you talk about the Gallup poll, but even the Pew Research, over the decades have indicated the level of confidence equally from 60s and 70s to the 90s and now in our institutions. But is it then the leadership? If we go back to Britain, for instance, and Prime Minister Gladstone versus ones in the last while, would people look at them as being as good as those in the earlier days? Is it the caliber of the people, or is it the information that is more readily available, fake and otherwise?
Well, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe, looking around at some of the leaders in power around the world,
mm-hmm.
that they can be as good. But it's not a fair comparison, because the leaders of the past turned out to be legends. But they were called forward. It wasn't that the past was filled with legendary statesmen and women. It was that the moment called forth the legend and the leader. The moment did. And I believe that we're entering that moment, and we will find the people that will answer the call will be our future, what history will look back on as the legends of the day. So it's the moment that calls forth the leaders.
Yeah, what is it? Some people are born great, well, others have achieved greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them.
Yes, beautifully stated. That's right. It's the greatness will be thrust upon somebody out there who is prepared to sacrifice everything to see the society through to the other end.
Okay, now with that, and again, I'm very grateful that we're sort of having a conversation. Hopefully, people at home are being pensive, and they'll allow this to, engage in a little bit of philosophical discussion with their partners and their families. I believe talking is good, whether you're playing a game of dominoes or having a good game of whist. But we're not talking enough. So allow me to just maybe talk again from the global perspective. If we're picking up on what we just shared and looking at it from that perspective, we're seeing businesses and leaders, political and economic leaders globally, saying, well, we need to get back to work. I think a friend shared earlier reports of the Falklands, 80+% of businesses are showing that, there's a negative impact. We're looking at it across the U.S. where many of the states and leadership are saying we need to get back to work. Spain is reporting likewise easing some restrictions. Is this push by whether politicians, their handlers, their interest groups, the business community, whomever, to make it business as usual, get back to opening business as quickly as possible? Is that the way we should go to stave off the potential for the debts that companies, individuals, and countries will face? Or is this now a time to be a little bit more cautious, a little bit more patient, to ensure that the human costs, the loss of lives and the other things, aren't as great as they would be if we were to do something else?
That's the that's the $1 trillion question. Is it
1.5 trillion? Actually, we have it.
Are we going to learn what comes after quadrillion? After all this debt, I don't know what it is.
I'm not even sure I can write that.
Yeah. That's the question, and I don't. Obviously, I can't. I don't know which countries can. It's a tightrope. You have to factor in the human cost, but also the economic cost. And how do you do it? I don't know. And hopefully, the leaders will be able to find a path. But a dumb, blunt, everyone back to work doesn't seem the right way. It seems that more nuanced approach would be smarter.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm hoping. Honestly, I'm hoping that with our friends. Sometimes if the discussions get heated, we may be doing it electronically. Once they're civil, cordial, and respectful, that we look at this, because it's not going to be business as usual, back to life as normal. That normal is going to be a new normal. But it can be better. And it can be better not just because we've made a lot more money, but we have a lot more friends that we can share, that newfound wealth or that expanded wealth. So with that, maybe I could posit this notion that as we look at it, there are going to be businesses that will never reopen. They probably weren't profitable to begin with if they did true economic analysis. There are going to be some new businesses that are going to be, just there because the opportunities are there. But when we look at words that Bill Gates, for instance, have used when he talks about, the loss of life, he doesn't even say, people are going to die, you're going to lose and be burying your loved ones. Just the terminology isn't necessarily euphemistic. It's almost disrespectful. Are we at a risk then of changing the way we speak and somehow trying to quantify or even relay the way we speak so that it becomes sterile almost and reduce the human impact? Maybe you can weigh in, but Ms. Susan reminds us we have a caller join us. Emil, let's see if we can have some fun with this next discussion. Let's go to the phones.
Yeah.
All right.
Good afternoon, Sterling.
Hey, now see, we talk about intellects and highly skilled people, and look, someone appears.
I am not sure who you're speaking about, but thanks in any case, and good afternoon to your guests as well. I have a question, perhaps of a one might say a pragmatic nature, and I wondered if yourself or your guests would be willing to address it, because I note that the conversation is extremely interesting and a lot of very good information regarding what we might reasonably expect in the near, medium, and long term as a result of what is currently going on. However, my question is really relating to more of a micro question, so to speak, in that individuals who are faced with the various offers coming from various institutions who are at least ostensibly trying to assist with the current debt burden and so on by offering temporary relief on payments of various types, including mortgages and then there's also the possibility of dipping into pension funds and so on. Just wondered what your guest's opinion is in relation to how we as individuals could approach or should approach this in order to place ourselves best for after the pandemic. And that's effectively my question.
Emil?
Well, unfortunately, my expertise, such as it is, stops short of the personal, but my co-hosts are especially gifted in this field, in this aspect. And so the best recommendation I could give you would be to go to YouTube, to go to the Radio Cayman YouTube channel and find the Money Sense show preceding this one, because there was a Money Sense show that we had today. Find the one that was on before, and there we had several guests, Miss Georgie and Miss Amy, and they are personal financial planners, and they were talking about how to react at the personal level, and they the best. That would be the best place to kind of start your investigation of how to react at the personal level.
Yeah. And I appreciate sharing that, and I'm hopeful people will do that, because I think it's an excellent program, and that one in particular was good. When the caller was sharing that, there were two things. One, WhatsApp comment that we want to share, but secondly, on the micro level, that individual level, whether in Cayman or whether it's in some other jurisdiction, if a bank or offers to an individual, mortgagee, or if a country decides, like we talked earlier, IMF says, we got a few $1 billion that will sort of delay in debt payments. Having that, again, the micro level, your bank says to you, you don't have to make the net payment for the next 3 months, but we're going to take your interest. So let's say it's $1,000 a month, just to make it easy. Your mortgage is $100,000, and we're going to take your interest, add it on this month, add it on next month, and then the next month, and capitalize it. You're probably no better off in the long term. Short term, you have it. But would it not be the right thing to do if they want to hit reset? It says, okay, put everything on pause. Your life is on pause now, so let's suspend everything and pick it up in 3 months. Your balance is 100,000 now. 3 months from now, it'll be 100,000. And wouldn't that be a more humanitarian gesture?
That is, Sterling, they say that sometimes you don't have to, the debt doesn't have to be paid, but the debt always has to be paid. Someone always pays. So if we take your avenue, which is more humanitarian, that then means that the bank pays, which is what the next few years in political discourse will be all about. It will be these different interest groups. It'll be the government, the financial sector, the household, the businesses, all arguing about who is going to pay these incredible debts that we have racked up. The IMF, as you pointed out, just like here, the offers that we have received on the island, it's not a suspension of debt. It's not a forgiveness of debt. I guess it's a suspension, but the interest continues to accrue for these poor countries. So it's just a cash flow management issue, which is very nice, but the debt always has to be paid. And the question over the next few years is which segment of society will be assigned those costs.
Right. And then, of course, if you play it out, you'll see increased taxes, perhaps, certainly in the value of your currency. In relative terms, the purchasing power may be less. Could the IMF, again, I go back to the 80s an example, for some of us, the IMF isn't the savior. It's probably the biggest sinner in terms of its track record. But is this then that ugly side of the coin that has fallen in the mud and been never picked up and that's washed off? Could we see that playing out, that economics and the financial controls that come about are shackles not just for the economy but down to the individual governments as well?
Yes, unfortunately, that is most likely what we're going to see in the years ahead. I believe there are 5 ways to repay debt, and the first one is growth, and that's what we've been trying for the last couple of years. The other one is fiscal austerity, and that has not gone over very well where it's been tried.
Right.
And the other 3 ways are to either simply default on it, to inflate it away rapidly, hyperinflation. Or to implement a slow inflation, where over a number of years, where interest rates are kept artificially low by government. They're legislated to be low, and inflation is kept at a higher level. And that's what happened after the Second World War. The last time we faced this huge debt burden, we went with financial repression.
Okay, now with that in mind, and we're looking at, I guess, the big picture. So people listening will say, well, how does that tie into Cayman? But as we just shared the funds that we have available, whether from the banks to lend to government or to the individual, those funds come from somewhere. There's no central bank. We don't have any sort of quantitative easing measures here. Some would even question whether there are any true fiscal monetary policies being implemented, on this scale. But with that to be considered, is it then that we're looking down the road and only seeing that, well, there's some money to be had by the big players and the rest of us will continue to be sheep laid to slaughter?
Well, that's why we have these protests all over the world. If you remember, in 2019, there were protests all around the world. People were unhappy, and it wasn't just a random year. It was year 12 of very slow economic growth, where wealth inequality and income inequality has been expanding, and the rest of us don't feel that we have an economic future that's bright enough to permit the 1% to make so much money. And this is just a natural, again, another cycle. And the last time we were at such levels was, again, the 1930s. And there are different countries have different responses.
Right.
Some of them ghastly, and some of them through the ballot box.
And I appreciate you sharing the idea that last year, you said 2019, so that was last year, because I think I saw something that, February this year had 29 days, March had 1,000, and April is endless. But that was last year, right? Just 3 months ago, 2019 ended?
I even know that it was 3 months ago.
I know you feel so. But the reason why is, as we come back from the break, we do have a caller, but I want people to appreciate sometimes the things that are unfolding now may not necessarily be in a vacuum. A friend of mine reminded me that for some reason, those of us who are willing to engage in these sort of discussions, philosophical otherwise, who become pensive and trying to, as a guys appear productive, to be the critical thinkers may get mislabeled just because you question the status quo or you posit something that is outside the box. Instead of being a revolutionary, go back to the Gladstones and the Mills of the day, now they're being labeled as conspiracy theorists. Interesting, huh? Let me pay attention to Miss Susan, take our break. When we come back, we'll look at a couple of WhatsApp comments and we'll join a caller. So please stay tuned.
We understand that things are different, and we are committed to providing you with the service that you need with convenience through our MyCUC online portal. Working remotely and students being home from school doesn't have to mean higher electricity bills. Monitor and manage your energy consumption by using our Customer Connect energy management tool. This allows you to track and make adjustments to your energy usage to avoid consuming high amounts of electricity and keep your electricity bill lower. Protect your health and the health of others by avoiding crowds and using PowerPay to manage payments for accounts from wherever you are most comfortable. If you're not signed up for MyCUC as yet, it's quick and easy. Just contact our customer service team at service@cuc.ky or 949-5200 today. Remember, we're all in this together, and you've got the power to make a difference.
Social distancing is crucial for our community to get back to normal, and never before has communication been so crucial. Keeping in touch with family, friends, and up to date requires you to stay in touch. Green Turtle offers the solution for both. Download the Green Turtle app now. Top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination in Cayman. Phones delivered to your home, and with the new rewards program, you can even redeem points towards a new phone and other products. Download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. #StayHomeCayman. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
The Cayman Islands government wishes to advise the public that vehicle license and inspection services will not be available today, Thursday the 16th, or Friday the 17th of April, as previously announced. Licensing offices must remain closed pending the resolution of the COVID-19 crisis. Government is working hard to resume providing these services in the very near future.
Hello, K-Man. I'm Quincy Brown. Anybody else getting mixed up with all these new coronavirus terms? Me too. But guess what? I've watched the press conferences and I've read the press releases and I've seen all the social media posts. Look here, I can help you out. Essential staff, police officers, immigration, customs, doctors, nurses, first responders, they are essential staff. So if you got to ask, then you ain't. Una got it now? If Una want to stay up to the time with what's going on, there's only one place for the real information, the Cayman Islands government. Visit gov.ky/coronavirus. Now remember, keep washing your hands, keep following the rules, and keep taking care of each other. Saving lives is Caymankind.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Town. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
The public is advised that the hard curfew, which is currently in place, prohibiting access to all beaches and the coastline, has been extended. This means that all beaches, including the coastline, will remain closed until 5 a.m. Friday, 17th April.
There is to be no swimming, snorkeling, fishing, exercising, or any activity on the beach or along the coastline during these times. Private owners with beach access are not allowed beyond the high water mark. This restriction has been imposed by the Commissioner of Police and will be strictly enforced. Stay home, Cayman. Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And just a quick reminder, 2 p.m., we're still expecting the daily press briefing. We'll go to that as it starts. Our guest, Mr. Emil Kalinowski, sharing his expertise. Emil, I just want to read WhatsApp that came through. It says, great show. Your guest is extremely knowledgeable. Please encourage him to join or recommend him to a government think tank. His perspective will help our country. See, other people agree with us, man. You're the man.
I didn't know that my mom knew how to use WhatsApp, but I'm glad that she's listening to the show as well.
Okay,
That's
see,
very kind of her to say that.
I thought it was her, you know.
I'm just being humorous. That's very, very kind. Thank you, dear sir or ma'am. Thank you.
No, and thanks, to all our listeners for listening, but for a guest like you for sharing. Now, we do have a caller online. We have another WhatsApp to share, but let's go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon.
Mr. Dwayne.
Hey, how are you, man? Hope you guys are safe.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, just feel bad about the beach. Live so close and can't get to it, you know.
Yeah, man, and the salt water and the salt air, I believe. Now, if the physicians out there that tell me otherwise, then I certainly would like to know, but I think it's absolutely healthy for us. The fish too, but the salt air, man, the salt water, the sand in your toes, the salt water in your skin. But it's sad, though, that people, for now, in early days, aren't willing to do what we need to do to get ahead of this thing. But I guess if we don't enforce and punish those who offend, then the innocent suffers for the guilty. Huh?
Yeah, nobody say it.
Mm.
But anyways, thanks for the show. Thank you for your guest. I just want to make sure that as a last WhatsApp you just read, I believe he should be on for the next month.
Emil, I'll take vacation. You can have a chair.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
But I want to just ask one question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have to put my trust in, say, a $25 to get me let's say a bag of chicken or 2 bags of chicken, right? Instead of me putting my trust in the $25, with the rest of the chickens running around freely, what would happen if I put my trust into those chickens rather than the $25? And I leave you with that little mystery for a minute. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much, Ron. Emil, I guess, well.
You'll have to help me understand. Is it that is it that we're looking? No, you'll have to help me understand.
Yeah. Well, I think, as we're looking at this now and trying to consider what will life be like when we emerge from this, what is on the other side of this coin. And I think if we were to consider that, what does it say? Teach a man to fish, feed him for a day, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, and teach him to fish, feed him for life. If we now down the road start to value more things, the honest, genuine relationships that we have with our co-workers, our families, and our friends, and not just a dollar bill. If we're also looking at the idea that, we don't need to be an agrarian society, but if we were to consider the importance of eating what we grow and growing what we eat, having the resource of the sea as well as the land sustainably, accessing it.
Yes, no, that is, I'm glad you helped me understand that. That is exactly right. And I believe on the other side of this that we'll have a much less financialized world, much less about money, and much more about real things. Right. Like what your guest was, what your caller was saying. People, family, church, chickens, fish, the real stuff.
But with that though, that's maybe what the people would want. But is it then that if we're looking through human history, the push to digitize the economy, to get away from the physical currency, because what we were told, it's nasty, it conveys germs, it's the virus is on it. Now, the fear-mongering that has taken place throughout history to corral people, to control them, we know from studies that I guess I saw it on the U.S. Paper money, that the amount of germs on that, if you honestly knew it, you would probably never touch it, right? And what the dollar bill, for instance, or the $20, whatever, has been used for, from the, as a straw for those who utilize illicit drugs to other things. But is that fear that is coming through the media, whether it's orchestrated and otherwise, to control and manipulate, could that put us into a worst case scenario where, what we said at the outset, 3 scenarios, go back to how we were, emerge better or emerge worse, to make us worse, to be in a controlled, manipulated people?
Yes, that would be worse, and no, it wouldn't be fair. And perhaps the way to escape that would be to what your caller was saying, was to be more resilient. And instead of investing in and worrying about the cash, but more in the real things. Perhaps that would be our way of resisting, by becoming more resilient individually as a family and society as well.
Yeah. One of our, and I count him as, thankfully, count him as a friend. He's an individual I think I just enjoy the way he speaks and he talks and he thinks, and he's willing to put forward a perspective. And he shared earlier, we need to demand compliance right now for a very short period of time to minimize the longer and negative effects of this, right? And as I look at that, I'm wondering again, back to what the caller was sharing. Okay, the premier, so the political directorate and its hopefully, not just his opinion, but his advice in this analysis, is saying, well, let's not congregate. And the beaches, we saw too much on Good Friday. But if it was something and then the people that were there were being dealt with, it's not how do I say it? It's not an abuse of resources to send them out there, if the health benefits of going in the sea, if the majority of people are prepared to follow along. The curfew violators doing the hard and soft curfews, they can't be the same people that are out today and out tomorrow and out the next day. It must be new people. Are we looking at it from how do I do it? A proper analysis to say, well, if John comes out every day, then something needs to happen to John. If John forms part of our same group, I'm being overly polite and diplomatic, so you may not get my coded message.
It's yeah, that's a possibility. It's difficult for everyone, including for government, who is trying to do the right thing as best they can tell, and government doesn't necessarily have to have that. It can have that surgical touch. So maybe they overreact, and the speech might be an example, but it doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe they can fix it. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. It's hard for them and for us.
But is that a problem then? That we allow these things, to be handled for the most part by individuals for whom there is a vested interest, and we're talking globally. So the U.S., the governor in the U.S. at a particular state may want to achieve a certain thing because it may be good for that particular area or good for that particular political party, or it may allow another party to look not as good. So that level of political expediency, the level of partisanship that may come out, the interest group that existed before is probably still there now, trying to curry favor and influence. Is it then that there is a need for the people to look at it as a collective good from the society's perspective and a shared ethos, and the lack of sort of a homogeneous perspective when it comes to, well, what is this society? For argument's sake, if we were to share that if there were 100 people out that the police intercepted on a day and only 2 people, so 2%, were in violation, and they were tracking that over the time, wouldn't that give us a picture of the movements? And then instead of saying 2% violating, 98% are compliant. And then, deal with the 2%. I mean, why go back to education? Remember the day way back when the one child misbehaved, the one child was dealt with, and the other 30 children weren't interrupted? Now the one child disrupts the other 40 children?
Well, the good news is that we have a democracy, so we'll be able to voice our opinions on that. And if we feel that the Premier and his team is not doing as well as we would like, then we can vote on it. But then at the same time, the votes may come back very favorably for managing through a very difficult situation. So. And of course, I'm sure the Premier and his team are soliciting feedback from the community as to how to manage this very unprecedented situation. So,
indeed,
no doubt there will be mistakes made by everyone. We're only human, and on the other side of this, we'll get through it and be stronger together.
Well, amen to that. And I think my comments were, hopefully indicative of not just the perspective here locally, but globally, because this is what is in the democracies across the globe, what is being sort of considered, we may say they're more autocratic, we want to say / communist societies, are probably able to respond in certain ways. But if companies are able to look at best practices, couldn't countries do the same? This particular country did a great thing with respect to this particular thing. Could we borrow that and apply it to the same situation or to something differently? Emil, I always appreciate your input, and as the callers and messages shared, You really have been a great, not just inspiration, but a great source of wealth and knowledge this afternoon. Any thoughts you want to leave with us this afternoon?
Well, I just wanted to thank you and Susan for helping me through the show. If it wasn't for you, I would just be fumbling forward. So,
oh, really?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sterling, and Miss Susan for making me sound great with the technical equipment back there. And I wish everyone to stay safe and to look to the things that are meaningful and that we'll get through this to a brighter future eventually.
All right. Well, let me leave you with this comment from one of our listeners. It says, and pun intended, you guys are having a sanitized conversation. I love when there are people think and talk and share their perspectives. All right. Well, hopefully we can have you and your other colleagues from Money Sense at some point on. These discussions are important. So continue to be safe and to you and your family to enjoy good health and wealth in many respects.
All the same to you and the whole family listening to us today.
Amen, amen. All right, we're going to pause and take a break. And if the press conference starts, we go straight to it. If it doesn't, we'll come back to me and Susan. So stay tuned.
Your 2 p.m. headlines brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio K-Man.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
The University College of the Cayman Islands wants to help those dealing with stress and anxiety related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The school says given the current battle with the coronavirus and the social upheaval it has caused, most people are dealing with some resulting stress. Head to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky, for a list of tips from UCCI to help you deal with the stress. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, New Jersey police found 17 bodies in one of the state's largest nursing homes after an anonymous tip said a body was being stored in a shed. A total of 68 people associated with the Andover subacute and rehabilitation centers have recently died, with 26 having tested positive for COVID-19. New Jersey has over 71,000 cases and 3,100 deaths due to the coronavirus. And another 5.2 million Americans registered for unemployment benefits last week as businesses remain shut amid the coronavirus lockdown. The new Department of Labor filings bring the number of jobless claims over the last 4 weeks to more than 20 million. That amounts to roughly as many jobs as employers had added over the previous decade. The economic crisis comes as the number of U.S. virus cases exceeds 629,000. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Your 2 p.m. headlines brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Social distancing is crucial for our community to get back to normal. And never before has communication been so crucial. Keeping in touch with family, friends, and up-to-date requires you to stay in touch. Green Turtle offers the solution for both. Download the Green Turtle app now. Top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination in Cayman. Phones delivered to your home, and with the new rewards program, you can even redeem points towards a new phone and other products. Download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Hashtag Stay Home Cayman. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Hello, Cayman. I'm Quincy Brown. Anybody else getting mixed up with all these new coronavirus terms? Me too. But guess what? I've watched the press conferences and I've read the press releases and I've seen all the social media posts. Look here, I can help you out. Shelter in place. Stay home. Stay out of Johnny Public. Wanna got it now? If on a want to stay up to the time with what's going on, there's only one place for the real information, the Cayman Islands government. Visit gov.ky/coronavirus. Now remember, keep washing your hands, keep following the rules, and keep taking care of each other. Saving lives is Caymankind.
Home, which should be a haven, can even be less of a safe space during curfew if someone is experiencing child abuse. If you or anyone you know is being abused, help is nearby. For emergencies, call 911. They will redirect your call to the relevant agencies. For general guidelines and inquiries, call the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, MASH, at 1-800-534-2273 or 945-0545. Alternatively, email mash@gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to have some open line. When the day the press briefing starts, we'll go straight to it. And Miss Susan's on the ball, so she's watching it. So you won't miss 1 second, at least no more than a second. But in the meantime, if you want to call and share your thoughts with us, please do so. Again, thank you for listening and sharing with us. And especially, thanks to Mr. Emil Kalinowski for not just his company, his friendship, his insight, his intellect, but the graciousness with which he was willing to share from the global perspective. What we were discussing, you could look at it and apply it to your own home country. You could apply it here, but just globally. And maybe appreciate the importance of thinking, of talking, responsibly, reasonably, civilly with people in order to ensure that at the end of the day, we have meaningful discourse. Some will share it's easy or much easier to criticize and complain. But if we can be constructive in our commentary, maybe we can be even more productive. So it's open line, 949-8037, or toll free with the compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. I want to share two things with us. One, if I can pull up the screen here so I can see it a little bit easier. And the other one, I'll find it. But this one has to do with the whole issue of beach accesses and the like. And I share both of these simply because over the time, a few of you have said, well, wait a minute, life goes on. Businesses are trying to, stay open. Some are pushing to reopen. People want to get back to their lives as normal as possible, to improve if possible. But we shouldn't be, forgetting that there were things that were on the table before. So let's not, leave them and ignore them, and then they come back to bite us, as it were. I was trying to remember how someone put it, and that's probably the nicest way. But this writer shares that, was glad to note that the Honorable Premier said that the beaches are public in that sense. And even though, it's been challenging getting any answered correspondence that the Concerned Citizens Group has sent through. Now, the view of this writer says, the legal department is wasting public funds while opposing the leave application for judicial review in relation to the beach accesses. Says what should happen, in opinion, is that the Attorney General should instruct his Crown Counsel not to oppose the application, and when the matter is finally before the courts, to simply inform the court that they are not opposing the application and inform the court that they're going to go along with the Concerned Citizens Group to make an order that all access claims to the public rights of way be registered. It says, why is the government wasting public funds to fight the people when there is a group that has done the work so that the accesses can be registered? And I share that in light of, I think I lost count, but it was just a little bit more than 10 individuals who had shared, so it's not a large number, but whether they represent more or not, who said, things are happening, but we still have other things that are unfolding, and the idea that a government would consider appealing against the decision in respect to the port referendum, perhaps one, is not the best use of funds at this time, but two, why go against the public view with respect to something and the court's ruling upholding the public's view. Now, from that, one of the 10 plus people who spoke to me says, yes, for me this is political. I want to make sure because of A, B, and C. But for the others, it was nope. For me, it's just that fair is fair, right is right. So I didn't mention it for a while because I didn't think so. So for those, as I said to them, I would publicly apologize for not sharing their sentiments, only because maybe I didn't feel it was timely. But hey, I was chastised and now apologize. Let's go to the phones though. Good afternoon and welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Hey, good afternoon, Jay.
How are you, my friend? Good afternoon to you.
Okay, Mr. Art McLean, I spoke to him about a week and a half ago on Mr. Art Connor show.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the government has 40 ventilators in stock. So I was wondering if any ventilators came in on the order from England, and because of a shortage in the United States and also in England, where would they be getting the ventilators here in Cayman that we need so desperately? Because as it is known, ventilators is what is saving people's lives with the coronavirus. So I don't know if you all are able to ask any questions with the press conference, but that is a question that I have for them.
Okay, well, it's still a question I think others will share as well. So let's see if we can pass along. You want to know, how many ventilators, where they're coming from, and the like. All right. Anything else you want to ask and share? Okay. Thanks much, man. Let's go to the other line. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Sterling. How are you doing?
My friend, how are you today?
I'm not doing too bad, giving thanks.
Amen, man. I hope it's gets better each day.
Yeah, man. Everything good, just happy to be alive and well. That's the most important thing.
You know what, man? They say, if you think today is bad, try missing one.
Yeah, it's not all bad. Obviously, I just want to comment on the headlines. Obviously, with the government moving ahead with the appeal to the ruling of the court in terms of the cruise port referendum. I think that it's a clear signal as to what is sitting on the minds of.
Sorry, respectfully, we have the news briefing, so we're going to go to that. I do apologize.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's press briefing on the coronavirus. I'm Donna Bush. Welcome to all our viewers here on CIG Television, as well as those listening on Radio Cayman and those who've joined us via our social media platforms. We now go to prayer from Pastor Jason Every.
Good afternoon, Cayman. My name is Jason Every, and I am the pastor of Sunrise Community Church. And it is such a privilege to be praying with you and for you this afternoon. Would you mind bowing your heads with me as we do that? Father, we come before you and we think of the amazing truths that you tell us in Psalm 23, where Jesus, you are our great shepherd, and because of that, you say that we shall not be in want, because you are all we need. And we just take a moment just to thank you as we look back and we see how you have led us to green pastures and beside still waters. But Jesus, we come before you humbly this afternoon to say that it feels like we are now walking through this valley of the shadow of death. But again, you tell us that we don't need to fear evil. We don't need to be anxious, because you say in your word here that you are with us, that your rod and your staff, they comfort us. You are shepherding us through these trying times. And so, Jesus, I ask, would you help lift our gaze to see you as our great shepherd? Would you be with our our government, would you give them capacity? Would you give them strength? Would you help them see you, Jesus, as their shepherd, leading them who are leading us through these times? Would you be with our healthcare workers? Would you strengthen them? Would you comfort them too in this time? Would you protect them too in this time? But Jesus, would you, as our great shepherd, would you lead us back, please? Would you lead us back to lie down in green pastures? Would you lead us back to those still waters? But most of all, we ask in this time, would you lift our gaze to see you, Jesus, as our great shepherd, to comfort us, to protect us, most of all, to know that you are with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
And thank you, Pastor Every. We now welcome our panelists, His Excellency the Governor, Premier the Honourable Alden McLaughlin, and Minister of Health, the Honourable Dwayne Seymour. Also joining us in studio are Dr. John Lee, as well as our Commissioner of Police, Mr. Derek Byrne, and HMCI Director, Ms. Danny Coleman. We also have with us via Zoom Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, the Medical Officer of Health at the HSA. And of course, all members of the media are joining us via Zoom at their respective homes. We now go to Dr. John Lee.
Good afternoon. There are 54 people to report today. 53 of these are negative and there is one positive. This person is a contact of a previous positive. This brings our total tested to 690, total negative for COVID-19 to 629, and the total positives to 61. Of those positive, there are 19 that are symptomatic, 25 asymptomatic, and the number of admitted has reduced to 4, and I'm pleased to say that the patient who has been ventilated is doing a lot better at the Health Services Authority. The other patients are all stable. There are 5 clinically recovered, including 1 at Cayman Brac, where they have taken 30 swabs, of which 29 are negative. 7 have now fully recovered, and I think, as I mentioned yesterday, that number will go up. I have seen quite a few of the first to negative tests after the exit screen for COVID-19. I just also wanted to say something in support of the Health Services Authority, because I've heard some negative comments were made over the last 24 hours or so. They have been working absolutely solidly hard since the start of this emergency. For the longest time, above all of the healthcare providers, at senior management, and all the way through working all the way through the organization. They've been searching the literature every morning, having clinical meetings. They've been reorganizing their facilities, how the patients flow through the hospital, and reorganizing all the services that they provide, as well as providing outreach services and enhancing public health week upon week upon week in order to meet the demands that have been placed upon them. I would like to send my particular thanks to the Health Services Authority for all of their very hard work, along with all of the other healthcare providers on the island. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We're going to go to April Cummings from Radio Cayman right now for her to ask you some questions. April, go ahead.
Dr. Lee, thank you for the opportunity. A lot of us have kind of become, I would say, living room quarterbacks when it comes to the treatment of COVID-19. I guess we've had a lot of time to read a lot of headlines. But you're the doctor. Some of the questions people are asking us are really about some of the experimental treatment options. They want to know about the oxygen treatments, for example, that the UK Prime Minister may have had. I know you can't answer all of those questions, but if you could provide us sort of a basic, I don't know, overview of how we are treating COVID-19 at the, I guess the low end and the more serious end of the spectrum, just to give people a sense of why we're doing some things and not others.
So I think I'm wondering actually whether it might be interesting sometime over the next few days to have some different people come and give a short presentation, if that would be something that the Government Information Service would feel would be helpful. Because I suggested that actually some different doctors might come here and talk particularly to your point. Having said that, I mentioned just now, and I'll say again, that just as the minister described, there's been a party that's been drawn together from all of the different healthcare providers, the large hospitals as well as the private providers, in order to draw up clinical guidelines for the management of patients, whether it is to do with their management in primary care or their management in secondary care, or even if they need to go on for more intensive care or specialist treatment. For example, a minister mentioned ECMO at the Health City. In that treatment protocol, they're also discussing all of the different treatments that have been proven to show some preliminary help in some groups. And I know that some of the patients that have been admitted, for example, to the HSA have been treated with hydroxychloroquine. You've heard about that drug. It still remains experimental, but the doctors have to weigh the risks against the benefits and make a decision based on the individual patient as to whether they should use it or not. But so they are appreciating all of the different options out there and being guided by the patient that's in front of them as to which is the best treatment for that particular person. But I think it'll be a good opportunity if we can have one of the clinicians come and talk to you on that point, or one of the frontline clinicians come and talk to you on those points.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. That does sound like an excellent idea.
Okay, well, I'm going to move now to CNS for Wendy.
Hi, Donna. Thanks very much. I have two questions for Dr. Lee today. The first one is that I just want to clarify the numbers regarding community transmission. I estimate that we're standing at around a dozen people that have tested positive that don't connect to another positive or have travel history. So I just want to see, is that about right?
No, it's a bit. I think it's a bit less, Wendy. I have actually produced a graph that I've failed to get anybody interested in, but It shows the numbers of, it shows by date the numbers of people on the date and a cumulative line as well. And the GIS is endeavouring to share that with you, and it will be published hopefully twice a week to show our progress. And on that graph, it shows the number of people that are locally transmitted, and I think it's more like 4 at the minute. I think it's less than 6, Wendy. But I would need to go and look at my graph, and I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, great. So that means that there were some that you managed to catch up on, that you found connections after all. Right, yeah. Okay. Exactly. The other question I have is simply about masks. Do we yet have a policy in place for rolling out some kind of mandatory mask wearing? And if so, when we give out masks, how much will those masks cost? And what's the protocol and the policy around it?
We don't have a policy yet, no. You would be the first to know. It's likely that, well, it will be announced here. There is no policy yet, and it is just a question of the availability. As far as the costs, I am not sure. Danielle Coleman may be able to answer that question. She's been more closely involved in that matter.
Thank you, Wendy. In regards to the masks, we are working very closely with the Red Cross and other volunteers to get those masks made. Now, the masks first will go to first response agencies. So we're working right now with prisons, with fire service and so forth, those on the front lines who need them. But again, we're hoping at one stage to get enough made that we can actually share with all the communities, and that would be shared generally probably through the supermarkets, but there would not be a charge for those. They're, again, free of charge once we get enough made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go now to Reshma from the Cayman Compass. She has some questions for Dr. Lee.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Lee. Good afternoon, panel. Dr. Lee, just to get back to the Georgetown complex last announcement yesterday, we didn't get to this question. You said that the residents there were cleared. Can you explain why they are not being quarantined or isolated? Or is that part of the plan to monitor these residents?
No, I mean, it's a very valid and important question to answer. With any particular case of contact, the public health team will go and make a risk assessment that's not based on a whole apartment complex. It will be based on each of the individual occupants within that place. And based on that risk assessment, they felt there was inadequate contact with the person who had it for them to consider that they should be further detained. And as a precaution, they swabbed everybody, and all of the people, as I mentioned the other day, were asymptomatic in any event.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. is it possible for you to walk us through what the contact tracing process looks like for public health? How is that conducted so that the public may be aware of, what the process entails? And that's my final question for you.
It's the public health nurse will go and visit the household and will essentially just talk to you about your movements over the last period of time to find out exactly who the people are in your life that you've spent contact with. And if they have any potential, then they will discover whether that contact was physical contact or whether it was contact for the magic more than 15 minutes, less than a meter for more than 15 minutes. They'll just simply talk you through your day to find out who you've been in contact with.
Okay, thank you, Reshma. Ralph from the Caymanian Times.
My questions were answered just a while ago, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And no further questions from the media for Dr. Lee. We're going to now invite up our Commissioner of Police.
Good afternoon. Quiet overnight, no significant issues of a policing nature to report. Crime still remains stable, although we are seeing a small number of burglaries, commercial burglaries in the Georgetown Central area in closed business premises. The same premises was tried twice, actually during the week. On one occasion successful, 2 television sets stolen, and an attempt again last evening. The hard curfew continues to operate well across the islands. Overnight, Little Cayman, no issues arising. Cayman Brac, 8 vehicles stopped by police, no breaches of curfew detected. Grand Cayman, 184 vehicles stopped by police, no breaches of curfew detected. But during the night, 2 persons were found out walking in breach of curfew and warned for prosecution. One of those cases is being reviewed and a warning notice may be withdrawn. Looking at today, since 6 a.m. this morning, 5 persons have been found in breach of soft curfew regulations on Grand Cayman and issued with tickets. This involved 4 drivers of vehicles and 1 pedestrian, all moving about without lawful purpose. Supermarkets and banks were particularly busy today with long queues, but all were being well managed and well controlled, with social distancing protocols being observed. There were no detected breaches of curfew across our public beaches so far today. Our helicopter and marine units remain deployed on extended tours, monitoring marine and ground activities. If I could now take a moment to speak about the new curfew order, which will come into effect tomorrow evening. So the existing hard curfew order expires at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, Friday the 17th of April 2020. This morning, as required under the provisions of Section 49(1) of the Police Law 2017 revision, I consulted with His Excellency the Governor and advised him that it appeared to me that, having regard to the immediate threat of a serious hazard throughout the Cayman Islands associated with COVID-19 pandemic, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that in the interest of public safety it was necessary to impose a new curfew order. Today, I have received permission from His Excellency the Governor to impose a new curfew order effective tomorrow evening, Friday the 17th of April 2020, commencing at 7 p.m. and concluding on Friday morning the 1st of May 2020 at 5 a.m. This new curfew order will remain in place for 14 nights between the hours of 7 p.m. and 5 a.m., concluding on Friday morning the 1st of May 2020. During this curfew period, the following additional restrictions will be imposed. On Sunday the 19th of April and Sunday the 26th of April 2020, both will operate as 24-hour curfew periods with full hard lockdown on both dates. No persons other than exempted essential services personnel will be allowed to leave their homes on those dates for any reason. Exercise periods in public places is not permitted on those 2 dates. Beach access to public beaches throughout the Cayman Islands. From Friday the 17th of April 2020 to Friday the 1st of May 2020, there is a full 24-hour curfew or hard lockdown on public beaches throughout the Cayman Islands. This means no access to public beaches throughout the Cayman Islands at any time during the period between the 17th of April 2020 and the 1st of May 2020 by imposition of the order of curfew. To clarify this position, this in effect is a full hard lockdown of all public beaches throughout the Cayman Islands, which prohibits any person or persons from entering on, walking, swimming, snorkeling, fishing, exercising, or engaging in any type of marine activity on any public beach throughout the Cayman Islands. This hard curfew runs until Friday, the 1st of May 2020 at 5 a.m. And to assist in interpretation, public beach means the portion of the beach that ends at the high water mark. I remind all persons that a breach of a hard curfew is a criminal offence carrying a penalty of 3,000 Cayman dollars and imprisonment of 1 year or both. And just as I finish, a reminder that we return to hard curfew this evening, 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you are not an exempted person under the regulations, you are not approved to be on the public roads, please remain at home. Police mobile and static patrols will be operating, enforcing the curfew. I thank you in anticipation of your full cooperation as we go about protecting communities and saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're going to go to Dion Anglin from Radio Cayman for questions for our Commissioner. Dion?
Thank you, Donna. I have 3 questions for the Commissioner today. Commissioner, thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon to you and the panel. Now, apart from the statistics, Commissioner, can you share with us your overall personal view on how things are going since the start of this emergency?
So I would think going pretty well. I mean, most people are compliant with the order of curfew, both during the day, the soft curfew, which are covered by the public health suppression regulations, and at night time during the hard curfew, which is imposed under police law. So relatively speaking, having regard to our size of the island and our population numbers, relatively small numbers engaged in breach of curfew.
All right, thank you for that. It's been a little over a month since the curfew restrictions have been in place. How's your team holding up, and what are some of the feedback you're receiving from the officers on the front line?
Yeah, they're holding up quite well. And again, I need to reiterate that our teams are supported by special constabulary officers, by CBC officers working with us, and by work officers working with us. So we're augmented by a number of other personnel. We're working 12-hour tours, 4 days on, 4 days off. That's working pretty well received by the officers. Generally, the feedback and the interaction is quite positive. We have had some complaints about officers maybe not complying with social distancing, not wearing masks, maybe handling documents without gloves. We've been addressing that right throughout since the 24th of March, reinforcing the public hygiene messaging that's coming from Cayman Islands government and the Chief Medical Officer. I think we're getting better at it. But overall, the relationship is quite good. I think generally communities understand what we're about, they understand what the curfews are about, and they understand the risks that are involved.
Alrighty, thank you. And I also remember you mentioning that you would further discuss with your command team about the likelihood of it being mandatory for your officers to wear masks when on the front line. Have you gotten anywhere with that yet?
So we are discussing it, and like the Chief Medical Officer, we're looking at whether it should be mandatory. We're looking at the risks in wearing them when they become damp. We're looking at whatever guidelines we can get. We're looking at the type of masks we should be wearing. And I suppose we do have an issue with numbers, and we'll address that with hazard management as we go forward. And as we get better masks, and I think as we go forward through the curfew, we will find ourselves wearing the masks as part of our ordinary course of duties.
All righty. Thank you so much, Commissioner. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Dion. We're going to go to Wendy now at CNS. Wendy?
Thank you, Donna. Police Commissioner, just a couple of quick ones, actually. People are a bit worried about how they pay fines if they don't have online accounts because the court's office is closed. So can you just say how people are supposed to pay their tickets now that you've started issuing them? We've had a few calls about that.
Yeah, so we'll have to issue clear instructions. We're in touch with the court services at the moment. There is an online facility, and obviously the courts are not there for people to pay physically. We are in consultation with the courts and with the Solicitor General at the moment, and we will issue clearer instructions. The rule is a 28-day payment from date of issue, so we're well within the 28 days, and we will issue clarifying instructions over the coming days.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. The other one really applies to, we had the conversation yesterday and you categorically said that people are allowed to exercise every day. So regardless of your name, you get to go out to exercise, and that means that you can drive to your place of exercise. So we still have day after day after day people saying the officers are telling them that that's not true and that they must only exercise on their letter day. So can you get some kind of message through to the rank and file that everybody is allowed to exercise regardless of the day, unless it's Sunday, of course?
Monday to Saturday. You must exclude Sunday in that. And up until today, at least, the hours were 6 to 6, and I think the Premier or His Excellency, the Governor, will make some announcement on some changes during the course of their presentations.
Okay, but what's your advice to people who are being told by police officers that they cannot exercise because that day is not their letter day?
So I have reinforced that instruction. There's a briefing every morning at 6 a.m, there's a briefing at 8 a.m, and there's a briefing at 6 p.m. in the evening, in fact, for all of our officers. And all of the issues that are raised during these media briefings, they're all reinforced by way of instruction from myself to the command team and to the briefing officers. So anything we pick up here that's causing a concern, we brief our command team to brief all of the officers going on duty.
Okay. Okay, can I just clarify as well, not the boardwalk, but the area between the Kimpton and Calico Jacks, are you classifying that as beach? Because that, again, there's some confusion about whether people are allowed to walk, because otherwise it means that they can't walk the West Bay Road, if that's the case.
I can't say the specific area there now. I've defined public beach as the high water mark. If it's inside the high water mark.
Oh, so they should be able to walk along that area then, so they shouldn't be getting stopped.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you to I think we have some more questions actually for you, so just hold there a minute. Ralph at Caymanian Times has a question for you. Sorry.
Yes. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for your detailed report. I have two brief questions for you. You said that most people are complying with their instructions regarding these times. What's your major concern, which has sort of encouraged you to recommend that the hard curfew remain in place for 2 more weeks?
My main concern so I think I looked at the numbers, 61 as of today, positive cases, and the risk that still exists. So I think there's a real risk, and this is a really critical period for Cayman Islands. I look at it in terms of the serious hazard and the difficulties that can cause for the Cayman Islands. And I think there's a requirement and an onus on me as the Commissioner of Police to make that recommendation to His Excellency the Governor.
Okay, and the second one, with all the activity surrounding us in other areas regarding the increases in COVID-19 cases, are you concerned with illegal landings from boats that may come from other territories?
So that's something that we've been watching. There's no evidence, no intelligence whatsoever that is an issue at the moment. As you're aware, our nearest neighbour, Jamaica, have locked down their borders there. We have our aerial assets looking at marine borders, protecting our marine borders. So no indication that there's any illegal landings in Cayman Island since the start of the operation on 24th of March.
Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Okay, we're going to go now to Reshma from the Compass.
Thank you. Commissioner, I know it would be implied that these new renewed curfew regulations will extend to the sister islands, but based on your answer and your concern about the numbers driving the 2-week extension, can you say if there are any plans to maybe specially tailor regulations for the sister islands given the low to zero numbers that we have there?
No, I think it's only right that we extend it throughout the islands. That we make an equal application across the islands, no exceptions. That's my understanding of it. I think that's been accepted by His Excellency the Governor. I think it was something we looked at, but I think it's a universal application across the islands.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner, I have one question from the public, just for clarification for persons who go to pick up food, takeaway, takeout. How does that work? Some persons are being stopped. Again, they're being told that they're not picking up or taking out food on the days that their alphabet or their letters are not on those days. Can you speak to that,
Okay,
please?
and I think that's a really important question. So we must look at the regulations, the suppression regulations, and we go to Regulation 8, subsection 2, item T, And it talks about persons can collect food up to 6 p.m. on any day and are not covered by any alphabetical index. There has been a misunderstanding by some of the officers. Again, I've clarified it. So persons are free to collect food up to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday and have no restrictions within the alphabetic range.
Okay, there you have it. You heard it from the Commissioner himself. Hopefully that question will go away, at least temporarily. Thank you, Commissioner. We move now to the panel. We're going to begin to hear from our Honourable Premier, Mr. Alden McLaughlin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Starting with the usual world stats on cases, 2,128,751 cases now reported. Total recovered cases, 539,000. The United States of America still leading the league chart, 653,751 cases, up 5,603 overnight. Total deaths now at 33,434, up 846 overnight. Spain continuing to improve, 182,816 cases, up 2,157 overnight. Total deaths, 19,130, up 318 overnight. Italy, 168,941, up 3,786 overnight. Total deaths, 22,170, up 525 overnight. France, total cases, 147,863. Total deaths, 17,167. I don't have a report on the new cases or new deaths. Germany, 135,663. New cases, 910. Total deaths, 3,867, up only 63 overnight. United Kingdom, 103,093 cases, up 4,617. Total deaths, 13,729, up 861 overnight. China, 82,341 cases, up 46 overnight. Total deaths, 3,342. No deaths overnight. Netherlands, 29,214, up 1,061 overnight. Total deaths, 3,315, up 181 overnight. Canada, 28,923, up 544 overnight. Now at 1,048 deaths, up 38 overnight. India reporting 12,759 cases, up 389 overnight. Total deaths, 423, up 1 overnight. Philippines reporting 5,660, up 207 overnight. Total deaths 362, up 13 overnight. New Zealand 1,401 cases, 15 deaths. 15 new cases. Total deaths 9, no deaths overnight. Jamaica still reporting 125 cases and 5 deaths. Trinidad and Tobago, 114 cases, 8 deaths. New York City, 218,707 cases. Total deaths, 16,251, up 606 overnight. Our brothers and sisters in the overseas territories, Anguilla, 3 cases. Bermuda now at 81. Total deaths, 5. British Virgin Islands, 3. Montserrat, 11. Turks and Caicos, 11. 1 new case, and total deaths just at 1. I want to start by saying that we are very encouraged by the results today. Of the 54 cases, there's just 1 positive, and that is of a known cluster. It is clear, I think, to all of us that our suppression efforts are working in restricting the transmission of the virus throughout these islands. I say that because I know, and we all know, that these restrictions are very, very stringent, and they severely hamper our general enjoyment of life and our ability to carry out business, and that many, many people are struggling and many businesses are struggling. And we have just renewed them for another 2 weeks. But the hope and the plan is that over the course of these 2 weeks, with the coming on stream of aggressive testing, we should be in a very, very good place, being able to understand the degree to which the virus has moved through the community. I have to say that we are also encouraged by the fact that some more than a month since we started this process and almost a month since we closed our borders, we are not seeing long queues of sick people turning up at the hospital or at doctors' offices displaying symptoms of COVID-19. I believe, and I'm going out on a limb and even tempting fate, I know, that this augurs well for the future. So I am going to continue my plea and my customary refrain now, asking people to please be patient. Please cooperate with what we're trying to do. I know I sound like a stuck record for those of you old enough to know what a record is, but it is, I believe, the message that is most important through all of this. I know there are many in the business community in particular who are discouraged and think that many of the things that I say are discouraging. Some of you write me, some of you call me, and many of you call my colleagues, and I get the feedback. I have reflected on this a whole lot, but I do not believe my message is wrong or that this is the point to change it, other than in the sense to offer the real hope of redemption at the end of this exercise. And there is increased reason for optimism and hope. I was handed, as I was coming here, by someone who understands how I think and how I worry about these things, the following quote, recent quote, just a week or so ago, by none other than Bill Gates, who was interviewed by an online magazine called Technology, Entertainment, and Design about the prospects of reopening the United States economy. And he had this to say, and no, I didn't talk to him. There is really no middle ground, and it is very tough to say to people, hey, keep going to restaurants, go buy new houses, ignore that pile of bodies over in the corner. We want you to keep spending because there's maybe a politician who thinks GDP growth is all that counts. Gates said in an interview with TED, that magazine, Tuesday, it is very irresponsible for somebody to suggest that we can have the best of both worlds. The economic effect of this is really dramatic. Nothing like this has ever happened to the economy in our lifetimes, Gates said. But bringing the economy back, that's more of a reversible thing than bringing people back to life. So we're going to take the pain in the economic dimension, huge pain, in order to minimize the pain in the diseases and death dimension. It's disastrous for the economy, Gates said. But the sooner you do it in a tough way, the sooner you can undo it and go back to normal. And that is the message that I have been hammering out over the course of these past 3 weeks. And it was, I think, something of a encouragement to me to see that it's not only I and my team here in Cayman that see this crisis through that prism. I want to I got some relatively good news, I hope, to announce. But before I move on to that, I want to pick up on the Commissioner's point about the new shelter-in-place or soft curfew regulations. We have tried as far as possible not to tinker with them, because every time we tinker with them, it's a new learning exercise for everyone, from the police all the way down or up, depending on how we look at it. And so the only change that we've made to the soft curfew regulations relates to exercise. And shall I say before I announce it that we've given with the right hand and taken back with the left. So listening to some of the petitions that have been made, exercise will now be allowed between 5:15 a.m. until 6:45 p.m. because we are cognizant that it is getting light earlier and getting dark later, and the heat is also increasing. The other bit, which is probably not going to be as welcome, but in order to assist the Commissioner and his team, the regulations now remove the right to drive your vehicle, your car, your truck, to exercise. So you will have to set out on your exercise on what the old people used to call Shanks mare or your bicycle. You're not going to be allowed to drive to exercise. Unfortunately, too many people dressed in jeans and T-shirts offer the excuse that they're going to exercise at all hours of the day. So that is the only change. Otherwise, all of the other provisions, which we have become used to, remain in place. Cabinet met just before we came here, and we have agreed a number of things. One of those is that we have issued a direction to the Cayman Islands Development Bank to allow a 3-month loan payment holiday with respect to persons who are customers of the bank. And so in due course, once the Board of Directors is met, customers will be advised of those particulars. In relation to concerns expressed by the financial services industry about the ability to notarize documents so that business can continue, we have made changes to the regulations which will now allow notaries to perform the act of notarizing documents virtually using appropriate technologies such as virtual images and audio in real time. I know people are very, very interested, many people, in the proposed changes to the pensions law. And while we have not yet actually approved the amending legislation, that will be done very shortly, maybe as soon as tomorrow, once the drafting is complete. But I can say that we have agreed, His Excellency the Governor, the Honorable Attorney General, myself and my cabinet and the Leader of the Opposition, that a meeting of the Legislative Assembly will be held next week, Wednesday, the 22nd of April. That meeting, the purpose of that meeting will be to approve amendments to the standing orders of the Legislative Assembly, which will allow the Legislative Assembly to then meet electronically or virtually. And in order to facilitate the requirement for necessary physical distancing, the Leader of the Opposition and myself have agreed that the government will only have 6 members in the chamber, and the opposition, which will include the 2 independent members, will have 4 for the purpose of that particular meeting. Once the standing orders the amendment to the standing orders is agreed, the House will then resolve itself into a committee to consider the standing orders, and once those are approved, the governor, His Excellency the Governor, will then be asked to signify his approval to the change in the standing orders. And once that is done, we propose to have a substantive meeting of the House the following day, Thursday, the 23rd of April, to consider a number of things. One will be the election of a new deputy speaker. The other will be changes to the pensions law, as well as changes to the traffic law and to the immigration law. The changes to the pensions law will deal with the proposed 6-month pension contribution holiday that we've spoken about in advance of the obligation to pay your pension contribution in May, as well as a change to permit the withdrawal by pension account holders of some of their pension funds to assist them through this crisis. The reason I'm not being any more particular is that we are still debating the precise percentages, and I don't want to just create expectations now, which I then have to come back and explain we've changed. So, but that should be done in fairly short order. The changes to the traffic law will allow Cabinet to, by regulation, to exempt various categories of fees and functions. So, and that the principal purpose of that, although it is drafted in broad terms, will be to allow registrations to be renewed, driver's licenses and vehicles and so forth to be renewed without the vehicle actually having to be inspected during the crisis or emergency. And the changes to the proposed amendments to the immigration law, which I presume will be in similar form, will allow Cabinet to exempt persons for a given period of time during the emergency to be lawfully, to remain lawfully landed and to work, even though their work permit applications have not been renewed or renewals have not been put in. So those are what we are seeking to get through next week. And I just want to close my contribution today by thanking the pastors, the many pastors who have brought prayer to the start of the press briefings in recent weeks. Those really do help us very much. They certainly encourage me, and I'm sure all of my colleagues. We have always been, since we were first settled, a praying nation, a praying people. And even though some who may have joined us in more recent years may not quite understand the depth and strength and conviction of most Caymanians, even those of us who would not profess to be really good Christians, we have a firm and fervent belief in God and in the power of prayer. And so I thank the pastors and indeed all across this community who remind us regularly that they are praying for us and for the salvation of this nation.
Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. I would like to move on now to His Excellency.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to start on the results, and clearly only one sort of positive today. So that is good news, and that is reassuring. Premier mentioned Bermuda. I mean, I know overnight that there were 24 new cases in Bermuda, and an elderly care centre is affected. So if anyone is not thinking out there that this is a really serious risk, I think it's things like that that really bring it home to us. So, and I strongly support the strategy that we've got at the moment. We've heard about the 2-week extension for the hard curfew and the soft curfew, and I strongly support the measures in place. But again, as the Premier said, we have some hope that our strategy is working, and that strategy of containing, suppressing and isolating cases that crop up. But as the Chief Medical Officer has said, there are about 5 cases that we don't know where they came from. So that means we still have to be extremely vigilant. And we are about to do a phased step up in our testing, and we're starting with frontline healthcare workers. So as we watch the cases each day and we step up our testing, this is going to put us in a much stronger position to be able to consider where we go next. And that, I think, is a good place to be at the moment. I have one announcement to make on the evacuation flights. First of all, to thank everyone behind the scenes, Cayman Airways, my office, Cayman Islands government. There's a lot of work going on for those Miami flights, the Nicaragua flights. The announcement is about flights to Canada, which I think there will be certainly one flight to Canada next week. There are no details yet, but the Canadian government has asked us to say that the only way to get onto a flight to Canada is to go to their website, the Registration of Canadians Abroad website, ROCA. We'll put details of the link on social media immediately after this. So any Canadians wishing to be considered for the flights being organised by the Canadian government should register on that website. And that's a message the Canadians have asked us to put out. I just want to do a few shout-outs myself today. First of all, I want to pay tribute to Dr. Lee, our Chief Medical Officer, who I believe is doing an outstanding job. He's under incredible pressure at the moment, but so many people come to me and say what a reassuring, authoritative presence and voice he is at these press conferences, and many members of the public have come up to me and said that. So I do want to pay tribute to him. He is surrounded, as he himself said, by an excellent team at HSA, and also the acting chief officer, Nellie Pucci, supporting Minister Seymour, also in an acting capacity, also doing a really great job. I want to shout out to our garbage collectors. They don't often get a mention in these events, but they are also on our front line, performing an absolutely crucial role for us at the moment. And I think the civil service as a whole, as I've said before, is really stepping up and delivering for our islands. Gloria McField, portfolio of the civil service, that whole team has been completely redeployed, showing great flexibility and going beyond the call of duty to help many people at a time of need. So great work being done there. There's also lots of business as usual work going on. The Auditor General continues to carry out audits, and that's all extremely useful. Ministry of Finance, a lot of analysis and work going on our finances. So my own thanks to Deputy Governor and the Civil Service, who I believe are really stepping up at this really important time. Finally, on a more sort of cheery note, I was struck by the story of a 99-year-old retired army captain in the UK who raised £14 million for the NHS. He walked 25 metres around his garden 100 times before his 100th birthday. So I think we can all applaud that individual in what he achieved. Thank you.
Your Excellency. We'll now move on to our Minister of Health, the Honourable Dwayne Seymour.
Oh, thank you, Donna. Comforting words from the Premier and Governor. I want to mention about masks. Heard persons asking about them. Again, some questions came in. The question was asked of Dr. Lee, but I don't think Dr. Lee does any orders or order any supplies. The ministry in itself, as I've said before, we're working on an effort to distribute, as I've said. This is not time for politics. And we value all 19 constituencies. And the effort from the ministry is to deliver to each of the MLAs in each constituency an allotted amount. They have been ordered already, and once that has been done, I was assured that we should get them within days, and signed off on everything yesterday. And once this has been done, then we will put more regulations in place in terms of persons wearing masks in public places. So I think with this effort and us trying to get them out to each constituency, along with what the Red Cross has done, plus many other private seamstress has done in trying to furnish these masks, that we will be able to move to a more stricter policy in terms of wearing face coverings in public places. So I can assure you that every MLA will be contacted to come and pick up their allotments, as they would say, or their stash. And so this should happen very quickly, within the week, within a week's time, hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed. So I know a lot of people have been asking for masks. Where can they get one from? They want to go to the supermarket, and they end up still going to the supermarket, even though keeping their 6 feet distance, but without a mask. And I think this is one of the ways that we can really beat this thing, by everyone trying to wear face coverings in public settings. Today's scripture comes from 2 Corinthians and Philippians 4. Praise be to God and Father, our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. In our efforts and translation, please stay home, which is one of the most important messages that we put out there. It's going to be Irish, Gaelic, and Welsh. In fact, I have a family.
Well, we have the police commissioner here, so
well, he's gonna correct me. Irish, Gaelic, fan le do toil. He's laughing.
He's
so
smiling.
So that's good.
Yet, though, have you?
That's it.
All right.
In Welsh, Aruso Harveth. Thank you. I want to say happy birthday to my daughter, Tahiti, today. God bless you. And I want to give a shout out to the hotels who offered their hotels for quarantine and isolation. My hat's off to you and your staff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also want to give a shout out to the DEH staff conducting all the hygiene inspections and all those officers doing the quarantine inspections. Hats off to you, and we applaud you for your efforts and contribution. Also want to say, I am and the government, we are grateful for all of those who are taking this seriously and has obeyed to the strict but necessary measures put in place, because really it's approximately 99% of the community are complying. It's only a handful that hasn't got used to this strict type of movement restrictions. And so I thank you very much. You have been the main reason where our forecast has been way less than expected. I thank you, I thank you, thank you. To express how thankful we are, here is what you assisted us with. You helped to foil our plans, projections, and assumptions of 65,000 in our population. With the projection and assumptions were that 31,000 people were to be affected, with 26,000 people mildly affected and visiting hospitals, with 4,000 moderately affected and 2,000 severely affected, with the sad part of approximately 700 mortality. So please continue to stay home, wash your hands, keep your social distancing. Only come out of your house if essential, even if it's your day to be out. So thank you very much to all of those law-abiding citizens who are complying with the measures that we put in place. You have definitely made a difference, as you have heard. We have many things to be thankful for during this time, and despite the many challenges, I am truly heartened by our many expressions and true Cayman spirit of our community, from the messages of encouragement, advice, and suggestions from individuals throughout these 3 islands, including those who ask daily, how can they help? I thank you all. I would like to publicly acknowledge the generosity of a few entities today for stepping forward and showing their support of our healthcare workers at this time. Avis Rent-A-Car, who has provided 5 rental vehicles to the public health staff who are conducting contact tracing in the community and checking those in isolation. Teachers from the Cayman Islands International School, with the support of various private doctors, corporate businesses, and the Red Cross, have also produced 310 face shields for both private and the HSA hospital staff. This PPE for our frontline healthcare workers is essential. We thank you for utilizing your creativity and resource to produce these, as they are part of the required PPE when caring for certain patients. Over the Easter weekend, there were many frontline workers at the HSA who were away from their families, and as a token of appreciation, private sector financial services membership or organization, Cayman Finance, provided lunch for the HSA staff working on the front line for the 4-day holiday weekend. Thank you for keeping those staff members fed during a time when they are working so hard to care for our most vulnerable. And lastly, a shout out to Mac Alpine for donating 300 N95 masks to our healthcare workers. We thank you. I would like to thank everyone for your generosity to date. It is greatly appreciated and is not going unnoticed. We have a long road ahead of us, but together as a community, we will persevere. I also want to give an update on the Jingle Open Call we launched a couple weeks ago. It's no secret that collaboration is one of the main ingredients to the successful creative process, but it is also true that remarkable works of art are often created in solitude. This is why we began the call as an opportunity to encourage our musicians to create and continue working while self-isolating. Well, it looks as though we are on the right track, as the Ministry of Culture has received 98 entries. I am so proud to see the high number of submissions, and I am truly grateful for the enthusiasm for the music fraternity. This clearly reflects on the abundance of creativity and talent that can be found in our islands. The guidelines ask the song to help us as a community to feel more connected and uplifted through a memorable, catchy tune. They had to be centered around the following categories: public health education and awareness, community solidarity and togetherness, hope and healing, and supporting local business and artists. With so many entries, it will take some time in the listening and judging process. But we aim to announce the 12 chosen entries in 2 weeks' time. It has been written that music is a common phenomenon that crosses all borders of nationalities, race, and culture, a tool for arousing emotions and feelings. Music is far more powerful than language. The power of music has been felt by many, if not all of us. I know this has been a source of joy and springboard for emotional strength for some of our musicians. I feel it will also be a source of joy the rest of us as well. I encourage all of you, maybe you already know of your talents, continue creating. And for those of us who have never put pen to paper or picked up a camera or a paintbrush, try it. This is a good time to learn something new and to give ourselves a much needed mental boost that creativity can bring. I want to say again, please wear a mask. It's better than waiting on access to a ventilator. Being at home is better than being in the intensive care unit. Prevention is better than cure, and we care for you. It's why we have a curfew. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Words of Dr. King. I thank you and have a blessed afternoon. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Minister Seymour. We're going to move straight to the media. April from Cayman, from Radio Cayman.
Hi, Donna. Thank you. These questions are for His Excellency the Governor. Basically, two. Some of our listeners have asked what some of the barriers or challenges are in organizing evacuation flights from Cayman to Jamaica. And also, there's been some discussion about pets being allowed on evacuation flights between the U.S. and Canada and Cayman. If that's not the case, if they're not allowed, could you just explain to the general public why that decision is being made?
So on the first question, discussions are underway, but we obviously require the agreement of the country to which we want to send nationals to. So those discussions are underway, and they differ from country to country. I don't want to say too much more about that at the moment because I think discussions are underway, and I don't want to have any impact on that. I know the question of pets is a really difficult one, and I understand how people are very attached to their pets, but in this crisis that we're in, it just really is very difficult because a lot of the time you have to have certificates of health and vaccinations, and there isn't a lot of time to get those things done. So I don't think there is a yes answer to that at the moment, certainly not for these immediate flights, but I think we're looking at whether that can be something that could happen for subsequent flights, perhaps the BA Air Bridge, but it is very difficult.
Thank you, sir.
I do have a few questions from the public. The first one is for our Honourable Premier. You've spoken about private pensions, which everybody wants to know about, but there are also persons asking about public pensions. Any discussions or talks there?
No, there's no discussion, and I know the view of the Deputy Governor is firmly against that. We're not sure why civil servants have all gotten recent raises. No civil servants' salaries are being cut, although there is, I see an increasing clamor for civil servant salaries to be cut on social media. There's no plan by government, no proposal by government to cut civil servants' salaries. So I'm not sure on what basis relating to this crisis that civil servants would feel that they should trouble their pension.
Thank you very much, sir. Also, His Excellency, a private rebuilding fund that you announced last week that was started by the DART Foundation. Anything more on that, and any other donors have come forward?
Discussions definitely are going on amongst the various sort of private sector parties who are wanting to contribute to that. So I think we won't say any more on that today until there is something firm to announce, but I understand it's getting close.
Okay. In an effort to move quickly through these, I do have a question. I think maybe Dr. Samuel Williams, who's on Zoom, could probably answer this one. Lots of newborn babies, or some newborn babies and toddlers are in need of vaccines. And I know about a week ago, Ms. Lizette Yearwood, the CEO of the HSA, actually said that parents would be contacted so that their children could get their immunizations up to date. Are you able to say how that process is going, Dr. Samuel? Dr. Sam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, it is in progress. Actually, the pediatrician alongside some of the nurses and public health nurses, they're organizing the clinics, and definitely the parents will be contacted. And that should be starting later this week or early next week.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to now move on to Ralph from the Caymanian Times.
Good afternoon, and my questions are for the Premier. Good afternoon, sir. I really appreciate the upbeat tone in your presentation because it gives me hope that we're on the right track. I have two questions for you. The first one is on food security. In recent times, we've heard of closures of food processing plants in the U.S. Do you know if that will affect our ability to obtain foods on a regular basis? And have you heard anything from the food suppliers?
No, I haven't had any recent discussions with the supermarket folk. I think one is probably overdue now, but we haven't heard any concerns being expressed either. So.
All right, thanks. And the second question is regarding delivery. As we know, because of deliveries, delivery business. I'll explain in a minute. Because of the curfew, most businesses now are delivering to customers at home, whether it's food, whether it's office supplies, and other sorts of stuff. Is the government accepting applications for other types of business for delivering their services to the clients in their homes?
There are a number of requests going into curfew time, and we really need to have a policy discussion about it. I mean, the concerns are all the same. We're trying to keep as many people off of the road as we possibly can, but we understand absolutely that the longer that this goes on, the more difficult it is for people to get by without certain things. So I think the parameters that go around that discussion are necessarily about the safety with which this can be done, and that with as few people as possible involved, in the interaction between collection and delivery. But yes, we haven't closed our minds or the doors to those considerations. I know that my Chief Officer, Eric Bush, has a number of them now that we need to have a discussion about. Because as they say, if this shutdown was for a week or two, it'd be one thing. But the longer it goes on, the more we realize that we have to try to make some accommodations, always balancing, though, the public health risks and trying to weigh in favor of that, along with convenience or indeed even necessity.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it for me for today.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. We now go to Reshma from the Cayman Compass. Reshma?
Thank you, Donna. My first question is to the Minister of Health in relation to his announcements about the distribution of masks. We've had some concerns coming from the public about the distribution going through MLAs as opposed to using a more public and open forum to distribute these masks. Is this being considered, for example, having the masks distributed through the civic centers, town halls, as opposed to leaving it up to MLAs to distribute?
We can try different measures. I'm sure we'll have enough to be able to put some at civic centers too also, but we need to trust the persons that these constituencies elect. Obviously, it's the majority of people elected them, and they actually know their communities better than anyone else, and will assure persons that are more vulnerable, like the elderly and etc., at least get access to these masks is what I would say.
Thank you. This question goes to the Premier. Now, you've talked about the pensions, which I'm very grateful for because the questions keep coming on that particular issue. Another issue that keeps coming back over and over again is the opening up of money transfer services. Has there been any progress on consideration of reopening these services?
In short, no.
Okay. Moving on to my next question. Can you provide us with an update on the situation at NAU in terms of applications? Has there been much progress in terms of those applications?
Yes, I'm told. I can have I hope, a full report for you tomorrow if you don't mind holding that question.
Okay, sure. Finally, we talked about Bermuda and the cases, both you and the governor. Given that this is a similar sized island with the similar sized population, and their cases being 81 and 5 deaths, do you think that, what do you think is contributing to that? Or do you see us as being lucky that we're not in that place?
Well, I really don't know enough about the circumstances, although I talk to the premier there, fairly often. But I know that the virus did get into some of the rest homes, and that contributed, I think, to a number of the deaths. And pray God that doesn't happen here, because we see what's happened in the US, we've seen what's happening in the UK, because the people, by their very definition, that are in a rest home are in the most vulnerable category of persons when it comes to just about any disease, but particularly this virulent one.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go finally to Wendy from CNS.
Thanks, Donna. Yes. First of all, can the Premier just go over some of the details about the Legislative Assembly meeting? Thursdays will be like a virtual meeting, and if so, how will the public and the press get to see that if it has to be on some kind of Zoom thing? And also, will the LA be addressing anything to do with health insurance? Because we've had a lot of people worrying about that as well, because they just simply don't have it now that they don't have a job. So will the law will that law need to be amended as well?
Well, I'm not sure about the particular technical arrangements, but I'm told that GIS will ensure that access to what's going on with respect to the Legislative Assembly, either virtually or for those of us who are actually in the chamber in person, will be made generally available in the usual way. So I guess that's going to be okay, but although we can check to make sure what the particular arrangements are, but we're told that people would still have access to what's going on there on a live basis. And in relation to the other one, now is not the time to not pay your health premiums, because at a time when health insurance companies are most likely to be asked to pay for claims, that is not the time to not pay your premiums. And the reality is, if people don't pay the premiums and their policies lapse, it's going to fall in government's lap, as is usually the case with these things. So I would advise anyone, let that be the last bill that you decide not to pay. Other than eating and keeping a roof over your head, you need to pay your health insurance premiums.
Okay, Wendy,
I think the concern was that people had lost their jobs, so they'd lost their policy.
Well, if they've lost their policies, we know what always happens with that. Government picks up the tab.
Right. Okay.
You know the story. You've heard me with it over and over again over the years.
Yeah. I know. That's what I was wondering, whether there might be some kind of freeze on mandated health policy for a while. But I get your point very much, though.
You mean you think we could pass legislation forcing the health insurance companies to cover people even if they don't pay their premiums?
Well, for maybe a few
I'm not sure we could do that.
Okay, fair enough. The other question I have is, it's regarding the cruise port referendum. You said yesterday that you were going to ask the Attorney General. I just wanted to check with you whether you yourself are keen to pursue this at the moment, because obviously the Court of Appeal meets again in the fall, usually around September time. So I understand that they had asked for it to be postponed till then. So whether you were supportive of that idea rather than doing it now, or whether indeed this really needs to go ahead given all the circumstances. So like your own opinion about this right now.
Sorry, Wendy, I missed most of that.
You said you were going to speak to the Attorney General about the cruise port referendum being heard at the
you mean the appeal?
Court of Appeals session? Yes, the Court of Appeals session in April. Do you personally believe that it should go ahead at this session or wait until the session in September? And do you feel that it is something that is purposeful to pursue right now, given the whole circumstances surrounding the cruise sector?
Well, my opinion wasn't asked about any of the scheduling. As far as I'm aware, the scheduling is something that's been organized by the courts themselves and the availability of judges. The cruise port referendum is not something that is even on the government's agenda for the rest of this term. Let me make that clear. Whatever happens with that, it'll be another government that deals with that. We have a national or international emergency, public health emergency we're dealing with, as well as trying to keep the economy from collapsing. That is going to occupy all of our time for the rest of this term and well beyond whoever else is in charge thereafter. So the cruise port referendum, the holding of such a referendum is not on the government's agenda at all. The issue before the court, and I did meet with the AG today, the issue before the court with respect to this appeal is not about whether or not we should have a referendum or not. The issue is about, it's a major constitutional issue about whether or not the court is entitled to essentially put itself in the role of the elected members of the Legislative Assembly with respect to legislation. It is a major constitutional issue, and if the judge, I've forgotten his name, the acting Grand Court judge is right, then I really fear what is going to happen here with respect to the ability of elected members who have been democratically elected being able to pass legislation in this country. You ask my view. I was a lawyer once upon a time, and old habits die hard. I believe that his judgment is fundamentally wrong in that regard, as I have always believed was the judgment in the same-sex marriage case. Not because I disagree with the outcome, but because in law, I believe they are fundamentally, the one was fundamentally wrong, which the Court of Appeal has decided as well, and this one for very similar reasons. It cannot be right that the court can decide what legislation can be passed by the Legislative Assembly. It is judicial activism on steroids.
Wendy, thank you very much for that question. We're going to wrap up the press briefing in just a few minutes. I do have a final question for Commissioner of Police. I'm not sure, Commissioner, whether you're aware there's a flyer that's going around from the Turks and Caicos Islands, from your colleagues at the police force there. It talks about how they're handling persons who break curfews, and it speaks to the confiscation of vehicles. And some people are saying in Cayman that maybe this is a stance that we may have to take, whereby for those out there who may not know exactly what the flyer says, they're charged a tow fee. Persons who break the curfew, their cars are confiscated, they're charged a tow fee, and they're charged a daily storage fee, which could go up to a month, which hits them hard in the pocket, obviously. Any consideration or any thoughts about this?
So no specific thought about it at the moment. I have spoken to the Commissioner in Turks and Caicos Islands. I have regular teleconferences with the commissioners for all the overseas territories, And some of the cars are seized during curfew, but are also seized for other Road Traffic Act offences. So it's not specifically for curfew, and the poundage fees apply to the seizure. So it could be disqualified driver, person drunk under the influence. So not specifically for curfew.
Okay.
I have seen the flyer, as it turns out.
Okay.
I have discussed it with him, and maybe it's something we can talk about into the future.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'd like to thank all of you, the viewing public and listening public, for joining us here today. Thanks to everybody who's made this possible today, including our esteemed panelists. We'll welcome back here again tomorrow. Until then, have a good one.